Ha!
Yeah.
And David's disappeared. I'm Andreas. I don't know what's in retrograde today, but this is Synctank. And there's been good to see you.
Are we live?
It happens.
We're doing it live. We'll do it live.
There's been a thing that happened in my neighborhood I wanted to talk about, and I thought that would be kind of an interesting nightly icebreaker. So there's this place where I would get gas here in Minnesota, and there's
The
like
food would give you gas. Sorry,
you know what I mean? They had like frozen pizzas and everything else like that. No, that's what I mean. But there's a place. It was a gas station, and there was this dude there who's working there. And then there was this huge bust. He was arrested, and here's why. So let me find the window for you here.
He got arrested like Shakespeare in a bust, or
is this the one? No. This one.
Victor Borga. So he exists from here.
Man convicted of brutal 1993 murder in parentheses of prostitute. Didn't say that here, but it's the truth. After his DNA was seized from hot dog napkin at hockey game. And so what they're not really saying is after 23andMeing himself, right? He 23Me2'd himself. Like, because he put his DNA out into the system. And from that, they went and said, hey, in 1993, no, this is a good thing. I'm pretty sure this is an example where, but that's probably the point, using case laws with the serious stuff.
Gentlemen, this is where we have the choice. Do we lean into undermining the underpinnings of our fundamental understanding of how the justice system may or may not operate in accordance with science? There was the show CSI.
Yeah, true. CSI started out as a show, though.
But
it definitely
this is clearly mind control. The same way that they never lined up a triple blind study and had the top 10 universities do a live real-time study of the coronavirus tests. Damn it, I said the word again. I'm not saying a conspiracy about it. I'm saying that at no point was it even suggested that perhaps it would help, raise the confidence level of the public if they ran a real-time live experiment with the top 10 universities, the top 10 grad students from each one, and they tested a papaya, they tested a porcupine, and if those came back positive, then again, maybe we're left with anecdotal evidence from African leaders about those sort of things.
The president of Tasmania, was that who tested the what do they call that strange fruit? I forget what you call that. The goat and some strange fruit.
Like
he thought mango? He was just spitting truth, but he was apparently writing his ticket out of here. I don't know.
Papaya or a mango or a guava.
And then he died, right? Like within a year or two of that.
But by the very same token, when they say they got DNA off a cigarette butt, it's like useful for children to grow up believing that's real. But
yeah, I had to go to a police station one time. I got called in to go to a police station because they found my fingerprints on a cigarette butt when I was in high school of a place that I got broken into. And I knew, and I actually figured out really quickly who it was because there's only so many kids in my small town of Corralitos in Santa Cruz County. I figured out who it was, and I didn't rat on them. That's not my style, but I had to sit there and be like, okay, so you found a cigarette butt with my fingerprints at the location where something happened. It's a community center, and they stole, I think, juice. They sold juice, and I think like $50. That was like whatever. It was just, but it was so bizarre because that's fingerprints, and now we got the DNA thing. It's like a whole other level. Yeah, it's fascinating.
I mean, it's kind of interesting. I
assayed DNA in high school. Did you guys?
I like the idea of data collection for predictive medicine. But it's clear what's going to happen here, right? And this is the question also about, I think Alexander Krull posted recently this idea that genes are destiny, because so much of what's going to happen is going to be our recorded humanity. And those genes are being patented, trademarked, and owned by corporations, which means for a while, they're all going to be owned for a century. And if we make it through that, then that means that all of these genes are going to be public domain at a certain point. And if that's in 100 years, 20 but then corporations like to make new things. So this is thinking far out, but I mean, it seems almost inevitable that they have to start designing new genes because they have to keep the patent updated.
Yeah, we've discussed this several times, but that was largely the basis for the original proposal for Kubrick's AI. So had to do with basically that all of our DNA was collected. And so in the future, after the human race is gone, it's the AI that use the DNA in order to basically recreate like custom hells for CEOs and politicians. And so they start with them and then they move through.
Oh, I thought Xirtus was going the direction of like, we have a bunch of junk DNA that doesn't get used or run, it gets replicated, but kind of carried forth, and we either don't know what it. I thought he meant like encoding seasons 1 through 20 of The Simpsons somehow in just that extra space, and that way in the future they can retrieve it. But you're saying that the AI would actually recreate life? That's plausible.
No, I'm giving a corollary, and so the idea wasn't actually that they really recreate life. They basically they kind of generate like a substitute reality that for all intents and purposes might as well be real on some level. So it's like a day that lasts forever, so to speak. So it's like, and yeah, it's sci-fi. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but the principle of the thing is what is important, I guess,
Dude, so being a huge sci-fi fan, I know you both are. Have you either of you ever heard the word scientifiction? There was something called the Fancyclopedia that was published in the 70s in order to promote Esperanto as an international language. And in the Fancyclopedia, version 1, version 2, version 3 might have been changed a little bit, but the word scientifiction was in there, and that was what they used to call it. And my name, apparently Stefan, is a shortening of that. So the way that you used to, it's like saying someone's a stalker fan, but it's a sci-fi fan, or they're a stuff fan.
Okay.
No,
I feel like sci-fi is, some of the most real that we have of what's going on in microcosms, and they're trying to. It's like South Park; they show it to an excessive place. Like, have you ever seen Rollerball?
Yeah,
like 1975 Rollerball. Rollerball is one of the most underrated movies ever. It's like a Starship Troopers level underrated. It's a movie that goes. It's a very real, very livable dystopia that's like our own, where states are becoming less virile and multinational corporations start to own cities, essentially. So you have, the corporation of energy versus the corporation of agriculture or science, etc. There's like 7 major corporations that run the world with scattered cities everywhere in this cappuccino economy. And then they have gladiator matches because they've done away with war, but they have, essentially they've created these blood sports where there is no hero because everyone dies really quickly. So it's this collectivistic, fascistic, but also like Starship Troopers. It's not, everyone's the same. There's no race hierarchy or anything like that. And but like gladiators, like women, like the women are sold, bought and sold, wives are sold and owned by the corporation and rented and leased to the dudes who have contracts with the corporations. So I think the main thing it didn't anticipate about the actual future is the emasculization of society.
Exactly.
They didn't really
things done ton over, as they say in some cultures, in the sense that, as far as I know, only women actually play that sport.
That's what I was thinking. Like, I could make the new rollerball. So if anyone hears it anywhere else, they stole it from me. It would all be about trans Olympics and everything else, and the future of rollerball would be about how
it's a nasty game. If you're good at it,
corporations make it possible for you to be better at it.
Or if someone's bad at it, they get flat.
The only way to be good at it is to be the best you can be, and to be the best you can be, the corporation.
FOHGYCB. That's what they told me in elementary school.
Steroids, hormone treatments, and whatever kinds of cyborg implants or whatever. And that would be the thing that allows you to compete in this game against other people.
Culturally, we move through a pendulum, right? So we go through extremes. So you could argue that rollerball is the way future, right? So like it has to compensate for the direction that we end up going. So you have to like project into it, I guess. But wasn't rollerball? Wasn't this the inspiration for Thunderball and Upright Citizens
they
Brigade?
updated it.
Yeah, so I see the rollerball.
I don't know if I saw that, but it seems Starship Trooper-esque.
I feel like the ball part is not the most important part, but there's a new game called Rollerball where you like go around shooting people while roller skating, and I think that's the most important part, is that they put you in an arena, but they had to build the game, right?
How about table, like ping pong, but with a soccer ball? Have you seen them Brazilians play this?
Dude, but the rollerball,
amazing.
It's a cannonball made of steel, right? Stainless steel cannonball, and then they have to shoot it out, and then you have to ride around on motorcycles to pull it fast enough to like. Everybody dies.
Right. So that's more like that game we discussed. That was it the Mayans or was it the Aztecs?
Right. Yeah. It's
Mayans.
more like the Mayan game where like the winner gets sacrificed. Absolutely.
Right.
And I think they're also saying that life is quick. People live and die. It's on the Logan's Run level. I think it's a miss.
That's the first thing that comes to mind with it.
As far as a practical joke, sorry, a line of code to insert into a culture that will just fuck them over royally. Yes, you're going to compete in sports and kill the best one each time. Yes, go ahead. And then like come back 100 years later and yeah, they're real docile, aren't they?
Man. Yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy. Also, we were talking about, the other one, but now there's tomato flu. Have you heard about tomato flu?
That was an accent of a macaroni man, by the way. So yeah.
So apparently, I missed. That's that. Where'd that go?
Well, one last note on rollerball. When I visited my friend in San Francisco, he was living in a house that was called the Convent. And Vice went in there and filmed a couple episodes based on the musicians or art that was coming in and out of the space. But next door was in an old church building next to the convent, or that had been converted into housing. And they used the giant open space of the church to install a roller rink. Women only.
Roller rink, cool. They took apart the roller rink in Santa Cruz and turned it into a library. I was like, what kind of world are we heading into?
Wait a minute, that's happened now?
The Scotts Valley roller rink?
They made a what?
Valley, okay.
Not the
Trewbury?
not the one on Morrissey, but
okay.
A library. I think I remember knowing what that word meant growing up, but I don't know what that.
But now their library in Scotts Valley is like a Silicon Valley library. It's like got 3D printers and stuff.
Is that Italian? Sorry.
That wasn't my favorite roller rink anyway, but that's beside the point.
I think having a bookcase with books on it in your house is almost like a practical joke of sorts when it comes to interior decorating and design. It's like a relic of a bygone era and you've like preserved it and insist on maintaining it, even though you could have a digital copy of it all on one surface.
See, I'm like afraid though of the cloud changing single words of things. So that's another reason why Rollerball is such an interesting movie to me. So like
Mandela style. Huh?
Where is that? I want to pull that back up now.
The shifting sands of our reality.
With Rollerball, like what happens is the corporations own everything, so they convince them that the libraries are too expensive to maintain, and it'd be way more convenient for the corporation to just digitize all the books and put them into a simple, like you could have reviews of the book. So he goes to the library, there's no library, there's just sort of like what's left of it is this corporate shell and ladies that are representatives of the corporation. And they just sell them on like, hey, we have if you want it, you can find sorry, we deleted the 13th century, and they just got rid of every, and this is the kind of thing that we're actually
not through a fire, but a digital hiccup, huh?
Yeah, digital hiccup. And we could easily be in a situation where Wikipedia deletes the entire memory of a war that the only data on it was collected in the Amazon or in Luxembourg or something like that. And then that library is lost now. And then they just had the digital references and the digital references get lost. We've had this happen. Entire languages have been lost that we had in Brazil. There's an entire language lost after a fire.
It's like an extension of the fallout from the Tower of Babel.
Right. And so we're at that point now where, if you digitize something, and this happened where they pulled 1984 and Brave New World off of the Kindle. Excuse me.
Bless you. It was Gesundheit.
But it was like it was the weirdest choice. Yeah, of all books to pull off the Kindle, the Brave New World.
Right. It almost feels like when they do that they're just like they're poking at they know people's immediate associations and reactions, and it almost just becomes there's like an actual Skynet, right? Is that related somehow to Google or something? The real world Skynet? What is the deal there? Is it fucking Monsanto or something? Jesus.
Well, let's look that up.
The Skynet is what keeps it's not a firmament. It's just
but my point
it's a mushroom that grew to one cell thick and it just expanded.
I imagine that there's been many
holds everything in
that have decided to call themselves Skynet.
Right. Well, you get my meaning. It's like, of course, people kind of like that kind of. It's like Soylent Green. You come out with a new soy milk or something, and you're like, yeah, let's just go for it, because they know people will have a reaction.
Skynet, a U.S. military communication systems. That sounds like a good.
Yeah. How do we brand the recent Tartarians in line with Mockingbird and MK? It's like, I'd shorten it a little bit somehow. How about the Zertosphere? I like the Zertosphere.
Zertosphere. That's good. I like Zertosphere.
Yeah. Welcome to the Zertosphere.
better than NATO. But so the Five Eyes, Skynet is a family of Skynet is a family of military communication satellites now operated by Airbus Defence and Space on behalf of the United Kingdom's Ministry of Defence, MODE. They provide strategic and tactical communication services to the branches of the British Armed Forces, the British intelligence agencies, and some UK government departments and agencies, and to allied governments. Since 2015, when Skynet coverage was extended eastward and in conjunction with an ONIC G1 satellite module over America, Skynet offers near global coverage. That's interesting. So they have like a one world, the sun never sets on Skynet.
Well, you've seen the kind of giant linear arrays that are caught on camera at night, and it looks like a bunch of points of light that are all kind of traveling in one direction. I've seen a video where two of those lines are crossing at right angles, and what you can see is that there's some sort of light emitted by each satellite where they begin range finding each other, and then they miss each other. And so it's like when you have highly choreographed marching bands or troops, they can march in formation and then interweave and somehow time it right so that this line just kind of blends through that line seamlessly. And it seems as though I think it was Elon who was talking. He explained what you were seeing. It was a range finding system.
Name stuff or nickname stuff after movies, but this isn't a nickname. It's like Reagan with Star Wars. You know what I mean? It's like people like those associations. You know?
Right. I mean, and then these are the unpacked Cape Canaveral launching. So Skynet was launched from Cape Canaveral. British, sure, but launched from Cape Canaveral. Okay. Interesting. NASA had to do all the work. Okay. But yeah, I mean, so then Telsat was a Skynet company. So the Canadians, they're British. I can see that. Skynet.
So
surveillance
Skyn in German means no, and Niet is Niet Russian or German. So Skynet almost means no. I mean,
it's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like the Skynet program is the idea that they're building AIs that are to take over the world. Like, have you seen the Axis of the Ordinary? Do you follow the Substack of Alexander Krull? He gets basically every day. Let's see, it'll load. Come on, internet, don't fail me now. Axis of the Ordinary is Alexander Krull's collection of AI consciousness links every couple of days or more, or every day. You know, he posts like what's the most important research at MIT or in Bristol or Moscow or in Kyiv, whatever. And Russia buying millions of rockets from North Korea and Ukraine. But he's got some stuff on AI speech that's pretty interesting about how we didn't really know how to teach AI to understand language until we did natural language processing, which would just have it study recordings over and over again, the same way we study encryption to break a password to log into a network. Once something can, but that's all through self-taught, and so all the systems now are learning.
And to say that you're teaching it implies that there is some unified it that's being taught, but in reality, each time one attempts it, you're kind of starting fresh from scratch, potentially.
It depends. I mean, we have things like OpenCog, which is a Ben Goertzel's project allowing for a unified open source cognition operating system with tons of packages, and they're constantly updated. And you can download this to a Raspberry Pi and install it into a 3D printed robot, or you could just put it into like a open SimCity kind of world that's open source as well, and you can have AI running around.
Or you let it walk around without you, essentially.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It seems like it's not you teaching it; it's you studying it, learning, and then reporting that back and contributing. That allows it for the system to get smarter over time. And so they've done this. Put these, for instance, these AIs trained in OpenCog into video games, and it's been interesting because the video games become they're really good, and then they learn from all the other players, and then they take that back, and then they can use it in other games as well. So,
so the non-player characters are playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's circumstances where people don't know they're playing against non-player characters anymore, which is like full on there are characters passing.
Dude, what was it? What's that website called? Something Madison? Was it Ashley Madison? Like it was
for cheaters that got hacked.
Yeah, so there's all these like Christian dudes that just like off themselves, like a ton of them when that all broke, because it's like that's some dystopian stuff, right? Like, so
I mean, who hasn't gotten an email threatening to publish photos of you jerking off or something? I mean, right, the wrong person who actually has Bitcoin and thinks that they're supposed to pay it off.
That's a hot take.
Yeah, but this is like 80% of the people that these men thought that they were talking to were actually bots. And so they're literally killing themselves over flirting with bots. So there's something like hugely dystopian about that, you know, like, I don't know, man. It's like, did you just share this thing with me, Andreas, about the guy who married the hologram and then in dead format or somewhat, so now he can't like get to his wife, you know?
Yeah, where's that?
Did he program it to say yes, or did it have free will? I wonder.
AI girlfriend can't software. I gotta find that article. That was so funny.
I think it would be cute to have someone kind of openly say, "Oh, this is my YouTube girlfriend," or kind of like joking that, you know, they're going to kind of be my broadcast partner, and then it actually develops into a real love story.
Basically, yeah. I mean, I don't know where the article is right this second, but literally the software is out of date now, so he can't log into it, and the company's not updating the old software. And so, you know, he would lose her in her iteration, essentially. So he kind of, you know, the option is like get a new AI girlfriend. The company
go out with somebody else.
Yeah, but he's got a thing for her. You know what I mean? I guess, I don't know. And in Japan, it's weird. People think everybody in Japan's all futuristic, like only to a point. Like, you know, it's more about getting to the place. You know what I mean? Once you've got it, it's okay. So they have VCRs and old stuff. They still have old equipment. If it doesn't break, they don't. And the thing is, you fix it if it does. So you've got this Kintsugi method where they've got gold soldering to fix VCRs, and they still are playing their cassette tapes. And they have these little tiny cathode TVs, and it's a thing. People like it. So I mean, Japan's got fax machines still running. You know what I mean? Because like, why change? They don't need to completely change. So I mean, the guy's got his AI girlfriend. That's all right. But but the thing is, if you could have a holographic girlfriend, and then the kitchen has a rail system that has recorded every Italian widow's like pasta recipe from their families, and you can download it for $1.99, or was it 699 yen? Then yeah, you're probably, you know, the company's going to make more money selling VR Girlfriend 2, I think, than VR Girlfriend 1. And it's going to make it hard. The thing is, though, this could have all probably been avoided to an extent if it was a more open source. They'd started with OpenCog in the first place, which is like, I think maybe, Stefan, your point earlier, these AI companies did not work with each other for decades, and it shows. Like, so many of these companies had their own AI that was not online to another AI for obvious reasons. But, you know, then you'd have to retrain it every single time. And you still do to an extent, and it's a lot quicker to do now because it's stacking cups, how AI trains itself. But so much of AI can be systems of how to pick up stuff quickly now. They're like, hey, make sure you look there, make sure you understand this, prioritize that, you know. And so AI has become more and more
it seems a little counterintuitive, but I think that getting a computer in one language to understand it and then regurgitate it or reproduce it is a separate bag of tricks or ball of wax than getting the computer to listen in English and translate it to Spanish or Russian, especially since there are so many regional dialectical versions of certain languages that I think that well, anyways, I'm not sure we're ready for that deep dive this early in the podcast. So
I don't know, man. I feel like the AI is very left pillar, and we treat it as though it was right pillar, in the sense that, you know, like, this is one of my big qualms with like the kind of treatment of etymology from techie people, as though biology was following the same rules as technology. And so, like, that AI sexual.
You described it as tacky to think that way. That's great.
But, no,
it is.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I use
Not
AI
blase-
software regularly at my work. It's like but it's for like enlargement of like art pieces, so like or photographs and various things. Because it used to be that you could get these programs that were supposed to enlarge, but they really did the same thing as Photoshop. And what you want is for it to match the colors that are in between, so that they can kind of like fill in the gaps, so to speak, and then give it the texture and everything. So it's not just like a filter; it's actually like an AI processing. But when you look at it run, it's like all the language is like neurological. So you're looking at like neurological terms, but you're like, this is a computer. Let's not forget. So like, I think that's what, like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, what does that mean to you? It's a computer. Like, I mean, at a certain point, this is the thing. People are, and this is why femininity right now is in the state it is in humanity in general, because we are what we are to each other, more and more and more. And what we are or what we aren't to each other also affects the general idea. And so people are grouped more and more into this idea of unanimity -1. It starts out as I versus everyone else, and then it becomes, okay, well, there's some people that are kind of like me because there's so much less like these people, and they start to create these Kyriarchical divisions, right? But AI being a
Kyriarchical. Did you just how do you spell that?
Kyriarcha. Hold on, just write it down.
And it's a reference. Who is Kyriarchy?
Kyriarchy. Let me. I can do this. Open this page.
No, there's Kirschwasser, but I don't know what Kyriarchy.
Kyriarchy in feminist theory, because as you guys know, I'm a raised feminist, is a social system or set of connecting social systems built around domination, oppression, and submission. The word was coined by Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza in 1992 to describe her theory of interconnected, interacting, and self-extending systems of domination and submission, in which a single individual might be oppressed in some relationships and privileged in others. It is an intersectional extension of the idea of patriarchy beyond gender. Kyriarchy encompasses sexism, racism, ableism, ageism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Catholicism, homophobia, transphobia, classism, xenophobia, economic.
What's the etymology of this bad boy?
Kyrie is a group, I think, right? Let me see. Where is it?
So how about the word misandry? Is that familiar to both of you?
Past it, but yeah, it's up there.
My father of
you saw it?
70 years old. He didn't know what misandry was, but
right. Misandry is super key. I mean, this comes into this idea as well. So let's look at the image, I guess, would help probably. Okay, here's a map of Kyriarchy. So in Kyriarchy, you'll have intersections of
I've seen you pull that up before.
Misandry. Yeah, so misogyny and misandry. I like to put Queen Elizabeth right in the center as a lizard person. I think it's funny.
But she likes to be.
But what it does is it pulls in a new uniqueness, and this was prophesized essentially in 1992 that the new coming age, the most centric point will be, the able-bodied or disabled-bodied at the outside. It'll be the most average of the concept of able and anti-able, LGBTQIA, and it really
it starts with a 2SL now.
That IA I think is going to become IAAI.
Oh, there you go.
And as that starts to transhumanism starts to emerge more and more, there's going to be, so you get the point of there's black and white, Asian and Amerindian, and then they're grouped into each other in a sense if they're saying, hey, sometimes we're more like each other than like the other. This is all just this weird.
Now, wait a minute. This looks an awful lot like a way to insert the intersectional theory into the red pill mindset. Just kind of sneak it in there. It's the same thing, but we accept this.
I mean, dang, because if Santa Cruz, California, I think Santa Cruz accidentally red pilled a lot of people, but I think it's a different kind of red pill because it's not like the kind of red pill of Christian fascism from East Texas or something. I don't know. Not that that's
an orange pill, really.
Not that that's exactly what that is either. It's probably a misunderstanding on my part. But yeah, no, I mean, I think what Fiorenza was she was a Harvard Divinity School professor and feminist theologian from Romania, and so she has a pretty interesting history and understanding of Latin and everything else. But she's she was like a Catholic.
Was she raised a feminist too?
I mean, I don't imagine.
I was raised with that mentality, but not being taught that there was a first wave, second wave, third wave.
Well,
casual admission by the academic.
let's
But
postulate.
misandry, for the audience that doesn't know, is misogynism, but the other way around. And again, it's
Right.
why didn't we were certainly taught what misogynism was, but and we were taught that there's man-made climate control and man-made this or that. It's never woman-made, or it's definitely, and it's not a pejorative, or it's not unfair to call things man-made in a negative sense. But
I don't like it because Misandry is too close to Miss Andreas, but it's the
Ooh.
hate or contempt or prejudice against men, similar to misogyny being the hate against women. This Misandry is a really interesting concept, the idea of toxic masculinity.
It's called safe male energy, and no one. This is my counter to toxic male energy. And again, I can demonstrate it, I can embody it, I can describe it, and over time, people will use that phrase as well. It's called safe male energy. And it's good for men to also interact with safe male energy as well.
SME, I like it. Manosphere. Look, that's kind of like Xirtusphere. I like it. So there,
it means you can be flirtatious. There's not going to be any assumptions. There's not. It's all.
This is such a. I think Misandry really. I could be wrong. I feel like it's such a Western culture thing. It's really not such a Soviet emerging thing. In the Soviet Union, what you had was equity. You had this love of equity. This idea that we could all have workers that weren't given ableist privilege, and that they would be, and essentially everyone would have ableism by the state, giving them, enabling them to have work and to have a position in society. So there could be, after Stalin, basically the entire generation had education up to university level education for many people, more than
that's some next level word ninja type stuff you're doing. That they were allowed to have a position as opposed to obligated or mandated or coerced.
Well, they were definitely coerced into positions. And if you watch the movie Moscow Does Not Believe in Tears, Moscow Does Not Believe in Tears, the understanding of, and this is of course Russia, not specifically Romania, but the film will really illustrate the story of a girl who tries her best to go to college because otherwise she's going to be stuck working in the
camp
factory.
College. Yay, let's go to camp college. Sorry.
And it's the same, but it's the same story as any story in the West, right? You got to go to college because if you don't, you're going to be working class. And so it's
during the Depression, 400 of the top 500 wealthiest people didn't even graduate high school. So
right,
you figure out what that means.
Yeah, I mean, so this idea of continued education, but it was also to build these, rocket engineering centers because they needed to have administrators in Kyiv or in Pripyat or wherever. So anyway, feminism,
here in New England, the land of the witch trials, and
right,
you might just be Andreas Xirtus. No, sorry,
I think that's really the thing. That's a better example. Okay, so
but I was raised. I've distilled it down into the phrase of I was raised. Not religious, but to fear the wrath of woman more than the wrath of God. And it just meant that I had no real reverence for any
Western
divinity, but
Western misogyny, I would argue, is directly correlated with women in brewing. And so alcohol during the Middle Ages, problems that the Muslims had in Europe with alcohol, this led to problems with women brewing, and also during even chauvinists, in the sense that men who just wanted to brew, and women had all of the monopoly on brewing all over Europe. And so they said, hey, these women are witches because they're brewing something. And this was a big reason that, we connect this concept with witchcraft.
It was code for women that were performing abortions, by the way. If you can't read between the lines, that's what the Salem witch tried. They identified the women performing these rituals, and they
Well, I'd only heard the drug phallus thing with the Salem, but you're a lot closer in Massachusetts, so you can please elaborate. I mean, so there was an abortion. There was a Plan B, voodoo Plan B.
Being accused of a witch was a way to publicly, the Overton window, so you could discuss it as a news item in front of the children. You're not talking, because if they don't know what an abortion is, then you don't have to tell them. But
really, but the things that they say witches do are so bad. They're like, they eat children, Well,
it's called. Have you heard of corpus delicti, which is a Latin term that doesn't mean if you eat the body and there's no evidence that you can't be found guilty. It just means that if there's no evidence. Sorry, again, yeah. I was explaining to Andreas earlier that twice for 3.5 years in a row, I dated someone who was in law school, and it didn't end in marriage and children, but kind of vicariously each day she came
So he's
home.
been through law
Both
school,
cases we could discuss what was going on, and corpus delicti. Yeah, so.
I mean, yeah, it sounds.
You can be like Harry Potter with that shit. You could be used as a command, corpus delicti, meaning get rid of the evidence.
It sounds plausible, but did you hear also that? So, what do you think about the theory that it was about psychedelics that they were taking? That they were.
I mean,
riding their brooms, right?
No. Okay. Well, there's a few things. You're talking about Salem. The argument is, and I believe that there's a scientific basis for this, that they know that the people had ingested.
Emily,
Ergot.
are we team witches? We're team women, I think is the point.
See, when the Jews came to New England, though, there's a tradition of Passover where you don't eat carbs for a week, or you don't eat leavened bread. And before that week, part of the ritualized cleaning of the house is you sweep all the crumbs into one corner. And when you get down to the last little bit, there's a kind of a spoon you take, and in a ritual way, you scoop up the last little bit of crumbs of any grains or flour or anything, and you get rid of it. And that's the way to kind of clear the house once a year from any continuing strains of mold. And whether the 7 years of famine,
he'll eat the mold.
Storing the grain for 7 years is either a way to make sure you never run out of the mold spores, because you can keep just going back to it.
So those you get black
purpose,
mold, and
or
that's
was
like
I don't know if it was Daniel from SpaceX who was saying that he thought that the communion wafer was in certain situations, kind of a metaphor for the bread that didn't have the ergot, and everyone was lining up to get a little bit of sustenance that wouldn't also melt.
That's an interesting idea.
Their perceptions.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, the like this would make for such a great film, because like we have The Crucible with Daniel Day-Lewis, which he didn't brush his teeth or bathe for the entire shoot, which was really hard on the other actors. But anyway, like the Salem, where people are tripping balls, and if you could visually communicate that, and like the scapegoatism of the like looking around and being like, you're the thing, like that paranoia and that whole like, there's crazy potential there. It's like Enter the Void level kind of like.
Well, the dancing plagues. How do you explain that if it's not some sort of intoxication that
that's the whole
they've
thing.
never experienced before? And
I mean, I think you can look it up. I think it's up there with why we think that fucking dinosaurs had feathers. You know, it's like we've dug up bodies from Salem and apparently found evidence of ergot poisoning. There's something along those lines.
Also, the dancing plague, 1519. It's all documented by the church, which is great because the church
here in New England, we have these like 150-year bank vaults that open by some like giant grandfather clock mechanism. And on one hand, it's a dick measuring contest. It's like two guys set up their own chambers, and it's supposed to like go off in exactly 25 years, or maybe their grandkids are measuring it. It's like, oh wow, after 150 years, these two doors opened within 12 hours of each other. And so like whatever mechanism was, but in New England, what do they store in there is not just the jewels and the cash and the artifacts. In New England, they would store, again, in the 1860s, there was a cannabis delivery system in place throughout the whole. So their favorite strains of exotic poisonous mushrooms and intoxicant would have also been in the same drawers next to the safety deposit boxes in these vaults. So whoever went in to dig this stuff out must have gotten fucking blasted with who knows what.
Kent says
it's kind of like King Tut's tomb. It's a little booby trap that was either inadvertently or purposely built into the.
They definitely purposely. Kent's documentary on Black Plagues, if anyone's interested in watching an account of flying machines spraying mist over towns, that not soon after the fall of the plague, soon after would be the fall of the plague. That's an interesting concept. If you look into the
miasma, isn't it the miasma theory?
Oh, dude, what's the name of that?
There's an old engraving that's been colorized, and it looks like a man cloaked in a sheet walking over the city. As you said, these drifting clouds. Okay, they called it a pea souper when there was just this toxic something. And if you squint at the picture, though, it does. You know, the body form kind of fades into the foreground background illusion, and it looks like maybe blimps dumping gas over a city. And but it's labeled miasma, and miasma is supposed to represent this kind of.
Have you heard of the Siege of Candia?
Evil beings, but the Siege of
Candia lasted 21 years.
Kandy, right?
It should be. No, it's a Candia. It should have been a. There should have been a YA. I think would have been the better way. Candia, but Candia, right? This was 22 years, I guess, actually, and it was off the coast of. Was it Corsica or Malta? I forget. But basically,
there is a King of Candy with a K in India.
He's in Candyland, right? The game.
But it, you know, like Troy's rival, what, you know, the biggest siege ever really was the Siege of Candia. It was on Crete. That's right, in the Cretan War, and it was a major stronghold island. And the Catholic Church really tried to save it, couldn't do it. Finally, negotiated to keep Dalmatia and the coast in exchange for losing Candia. But what they were trying to do at the end there was they were taking bodies from Janissaries and dead Ottomans and people and whatever they could do. And they
Janissaries? What's a janissary?
A janissary,
like like Janus the god, and it's like a sanctuary, but a janissary.
I way prefer your definition. A janissary is the Ottoman Muslim Empire would get Christian Croatians and Serbians and Slavs, and then they would turn them into soldiers. They would say, hey, to pay taxes, you just send your sons because you don't have any land or any animals or anything. You guys just send your sons to battle. You give us at least one of your sons, maybe your third.
So instead of secret agent Hashashins, they became.
And people had extra sons, you know, and you'd give everything you had to your firstborn anyway. So it wasn't that big of a deal. So you had these Christians fighting for the Muslims that would fight against the Crusade Christians, which just made things way more convoluted.
Part of the Passover story that I already brought up involves the killing of the firstborn son. And as a middle child, I didn't have this experience, but my older brother spent the first 10 years of his life absolutely sure that one of these years when Passover came around as the firstborn son, he was going to fucking get it. And it was like this whole moment at the table. They did not understand why he was so upset by this holiday. And I heard what you said.
Can I tie this back to something? You're on one.
I just wanted to say that the Janissaries that were fighting, the funniest part was they're fighting against the people that are trying to save the lands the Janissaries are from, right? This guy's probably from Dalmatia, fighting against them. So that's funny to me. But yeah, you go ahead.
Mm-hmm. How are you spelling this?
Oh, but there was more. There was a thing, but you can go ahead. Just remind me.
Outside of timestamps, we're going to have a vocab list.
Okay, wait, yeah, because timestamps, we're going to try to keep on the Dalmatia.
Especially if I were watching a foreign language podcast, I would so appreciate the ability to slowly build up that.
Just remember what you're talking about, David, because I'm almost done. Here's the deal. So they almost lost the war. They're going to lose the war. They lose it anyway, but they have some scientists that escape. And the things that they were working on that they brought to Dalmatia were plague factories. And what they were doing is they're taking spinal taps of dead Janissaries and corpses, and they were trying to make plague warfare that they would shoot out and spray, and they even had little gliders that they would send out and try to spray.
You got to crystallize it and snort it.
It's always changing and it's always the same.
But they didn't succeed in doing this during this war. Well, I mean, I don't know how.
Please do not try it.
I don't know where you'd even get the plague to do that, but please don't try the plague at home.
Speaking of Candia, have you heard of Candida? And then, sorry, definitely passing it over. But Candida is a yeast infection on your skin, and of contagious things. Like I've practiced in a yoga studio where some guy is just covered in it, and no one else in the studio got it.
Is there an etymological connection there? Because that'd be pretty crazy. But if not, that's sinky. So there's in the Zohar, when they speak to the tree of knowledge, it's equated in by Kabbalist commentators of old that they're literally like that the tree of knowledge, distinct from the tree of life, is actually grain. And that they it's kind of trippy. I don't know. Like people would probably intellectuals might disagree with me on this point because it's speculative. But the Orphic egg, the way that you'd have the serpent that's kind of entwining this egg with its head at the top. That's
actually a symbol for a shark egg, but that's a separate issue. If you look up shark eggs, that's what they look like. It's freaky. But go ahead.
All right, yeah, buy the black egg without haggling. But it describes this point. So it says in Aden, wherever we might want to argue that is Africa or whatever, they say that there's a point that begins what they describe as a green line that encircles the planet, twisting. It twists around the planet, and it's actually basically it's blocking the emanated flow in its fullness. So it's basically restraining its consciousness. So it's like whatever state we were in the first place, when it first got the introduction of the beginning of the fall, they equate with us eating grain improperly. So they say we began to eat the grain, and that we didn't remove the shells, and it basically describes like, you know, what seems to suggest old grain. So it's tainted grain, and that idea of the tainted grain reoccurs throughout Judaism. But and obviously this is Jewish mysticism, written minimum of the 12th century. It could have been older than that. We don't really know. But I really like that idea that
when you say
that
a twisting green river or something, I picture phytoplankton or zooplankton that went airborne.
It's a green line.
It's green rivers. Or...
It's equated with the serpent itself. So when you're saying the serpent is in the tree of knowledge, then it's describing the way that it's like, so it takes over the organism, but it's a larger organism because it's the people on the planet that has started here and then it's spread. Oh, we have a Lady Frida Harris piece right here. That's one of her tracing boards for her you know, female Freemasonry. You know, this is the woman who painted all the Crowley cards. That's in the Thoth deck. You know? Yeah, and she was meant to act as right pillar. He was meant to act as left. So she had no prior knowledge of the occult, supposedly, until she started painting those. And there, in each one of those cards,
so she was coming in from the cold, so to speak, on it.
Yeah, those are large scale paintings. And as for every card that you see, of which there's 78, there's several for each one that were burned. And he would just have her repaint it if something didn't fit the way, you know, whatever. So yeah, when you look at if you ever look at those cards, say what you will about Crowley and whatever, they're not Crowley's cards. They're Lady Frida Harris's, and her role was, you know, to play the receptive side of, you know, oh, you got it right in front of you. Look at you. Yeah.
Do you need a full one?
It's all right.
So,
look what I got. Luxury.
Yeah.
Luxury. That's
I used to live in a box on the side of the road. We'd eat like a bean at night. Luxury. I lived in an old rag.
you brought up Aleister Crowley. So can I make a simple reference to Aleister Crowley it's kind of a mind melter?
Sure.
Go on.
Can I don't know how to, I can tell you what 4 words to type into Google to pull up. It's the first one that comes up. If you type in NACA space NASA. So NACA, NACA, was the original designation for the agency. And then they changed. So NACA, NASA, and then sign entrance first. So 5 words, sorry. And there should be a winged sign that shows up. So NACA, NASA, sign entrance first.
This guy?
Let me see. Actually, I got to get it back in StreamYard here. No, so it's on a building. So in Google, oh, you're right. You're not in Google, huh?
Oh, you... Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Guys, don't try this at home.
The universe, it's diverging already. So this. Okay. So if this were a European crest with someone's initials on it, what do? You read the middle first, and then on the left side is the initial for the middle name, and on the so this is the Aeronautic Club North America, or it's Aleister Crowley North America, one or the other.
Or Aleister Crowley not applicable.
The beautiful American came along.
Whoa.
The beautiful American civilization arose, looked at that, and went, NACA.
Yeah. You ever look closely at the Lost Boys poster? You ever notice that the letters that are emboldened spell out OTO? Because the director, I forget his name, was a Thelemite. So yeah, just any of those.
We move on so fast. I've been saving that one in the back of that's like one of my like trump cards to play. Can we savor that though? And do you guys agree that NACA and NASA, there was a confusion there, and that we're not pronounced? It was supposed to be ACNA.
Well, it's interesting that we've discussed this, but when
that was over the entrance of the building that became NASA.
Yeah, it sounds scary though.
I was transcribing some Hebrew with my rabbi, and we came across that word, and I pronounced it, and I'm like, am I pronouncing that right? And it's NASA, and I'm looking it up in the dictionary, and I'm like, it means to deceive, and he was like, yeah. Moving on. You know,
yeah, okay, but deceiving and moving on the side. How do I get credit for this? Because you've never heard anyone say that before, and it's true. Look at it. It's ridiculous that we read that. Again, anyone from any decent background, it was exposed to any amount of culture, would know that is the order you would read this is ACNA.
Sure, I think a lot of people would relate more to the Jack Parsons Jet Propulsion's lab as the Crowley connection. You have
that's what this is from.
And then you have Project Paperclip. Yeah, it's the earliest days of NASA.
This is like the cherry on top of the icing on top of the sundae on the cake, right? Like I found the cherry.
I mean, just because people have sex, does that mean that
it was the moment it diverged to idiocracy from like the main timeline? Was when instead of calling it the Aeronautic Club of North America. Someone called it NACA, and it stuck.
Yeah.
So you want to go to Stanford, crash of 29, crippled his fortunes, nosedive, could not do it, and then went to start Hercules Powder Company. There's a sync because Candia is also called Heracleon, right? Hercules city on the Isle of Crete, right? So there's that. And Hercules has some root to own, which is the energy city, I'm pretty sure.
Right, and keep in mind, as far as that school of thought is concerned, speaking to Lucis Trust, Alice Bailey had a whole big old thing about Hercules and that the 12 trials, how they're related to the 12 signs and all this stuff. So that's embedded in the UN. So we have that.
Yeah, and the EU flag, right?
You guys still didn't answer my question. How do I get credit for it? No, sorry.
That's fair. That's
Should I start my own Wikipedia page? I don't get it.
Well, I would harp on it further and put this into a time.
Getting a doctorate degree, my understanding was that you're adding to the body of human knowledge, and this isn't a thesis, but this is like
I remember when making sigils, you're not supposed to, if you're going to put your thing into a thing, you don't want it to be disconnected like that, because it's like you can break the seal, like you break the ley line or the magic line.
You should subliminally splice in frames of that incubate logo that I sent you.
The fact that
bringing it out.
The fact that N and A are separate like that, there's two wings, it really represents two heads. It's like the two different heads, and then there's a unified thing that's existing in both, flying across both. So whatever,
there's something very owl like. There's an owl flying at you.
Well, that would be like the corpus callosum, no, or like the pineal or pituitary. You have the medial point, and then you got the.
But does it refer to the? Does it refer to like what is the N and the A? Could it refer to the west and the east, or is it up and down, as above and so below?
I thought Norte Americano.
Probably not. Probably more.
Not being limited to what is
North America, because North America would
see, there's Mexico, and again, this is part of our tongue being broken. So there's a Mexico, like a Mexica, a Mexico, a Mexico, America. It's the same friggin' word, and we just diverge so much that our brains don't fit them back together.
We pronounce it the Persian way because we don't pronounce the ja. We do.
Estados Unidos, America.
The R
Mexico.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, the Persians don't pronounce their R's; they use.
Mexico also maybe means mechanics as well.
But okay,
there's an ancient order of
AC before advisory committee. I mean,
Indian motorcycle.
But yeah, Jack Parsons really did build incredible technology. Was involved with the occult. I mean, there's no question about any of those things. I mean, remember the Polaris missiles. Do you think though that rockets are really? I mean, is it just a completely occult technology? Like I've been looking into where did
because glass blowing uses nozzles that are jets, and they did that thousands of years ago. So it was the reason that people that are interested in the occult and have an adeptness to translate possible meanings out of it end up making discoveries in the realm of chemistry is because it's like the species with amnesia thing going away for a second, where someone goes, oh, if you want it to burn at this temperature, here, mix this powder with this powder. And it's like, how do you know that? Well, it's in my book. Well, where is it? It's like, I just translated something off of one of my grandfather's books or off the side of a building. Or
this is an interesting thing because I was looking into Roswell and we were talking about the MOSFET semiconductor, right? And the MOSFET semiconductor is cool because it's the Terminator 2 of semiconductors, right? But the idea that they couldn't have had controlled oxidation of silicon before it's not true. Controlled oxidation really is a drip system that you could have had a drip system with silica. You could, and so alchemy, like alchemy condensation, too many C's, but you're able to do that. There's all sorts of lessons from about condensation and how to gather chemicals and how to get sands.
As far as reinterpreting or using a set of symbols that may have gone out of mode, but is somewhat a sigil, it somehow is like an automatopoeia. It fits, and you can kind of look at it in context, understand what it means. We were also talking about language and coding at the beginning. So there will be, in my opinion, or maybe already be, a generation of people that are illiterate in the sense that they can't read or write a phonetic language or even a hieroglyphic one, but there are already like children's programming platforms that kind of break down code chains into a symbol, and then the kid can kind of assemble, or a beginning coder could assemble these kind of pictographic blocks and create a functioning program. So at what point is that actually, because once you learn to read and write in a certain language, it's impossible for me to look at that and not have in my mind's eye reading out loud, was key in sending America to space. And there's stories about, people who raise livestock, if they don't know numbers, if they don't know letters, then they can basically look at their flock and instantly tell you how many there are and if there's one missing and which one it is. Whereas if you've been kind of indoctrinated with this neurolinguistic programming from a young age, the brain may actually develop differently and lose certain competencies. So identifying someone as illiterate could actually be a way to identify someone who's more likely to have certain types of visual intelligence, and kind of the way that the chimpanzees were able to instantly identify where all the 9 numbers were. We might have not bred that out of ourselves, but brainwashed it out essentially.
Right. I mean, the idea that we had glass and we had all sorts of alchemy.
Because I can read and write, I swear.
At least in some respect, right? Because also the way we read and write, we've limited that. We're not using as many words.
But I can't code, so I'm as good as illiterate, actually.
That's another question. Do you think that coding can liberate us, or is that going to be more like newspeak than ever? Is it more or less newspeak?
Well, the future of writing is 100% emoji. It's back to hieroglyph, pretty sure. No, I don't know. I'm not a coder. I just feel like it's like you got 2 different chains. You got the actual, like, you guys see Nope?
No.
Yep. Nope. You haven't seen Nope? Jordan Peele?
Yeah.
Okay, it'd be helpful right now. But yeah, no, just that distinction between an organism and to technology, and the way that you can be relating to something. Like it's in a cloud, so it's hiding in a cloud, right? You're showing the image, so spoiler alert, sorry. But
what was the prompt again? What was the question?
So basically, no, it's just that repeated...
No, but Andreas, you're responding to something. I think I'm trying to understand what the reference is tying back to. That's all.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like, for me, I'm interested in the cloud part because weather balloons. Yesterday, I was talking to alien scientist Jeremy Reese about weather balloons and CIA, NASA, all that stuff. And a weather balloon, we made the joke. Yeah, it was a weather balloon. It was a balloon made of weather, and just go back to sleep. But the idea that there's like consciousness in clouds, that's something Disintegral Lee on our channel, Lee Blanche, has done videos about. And I think there's something to the idea that the Schumann resonance, or consciousness in a more broad sense, could be living in vaporous form. I don't know what that means, what that really like comes down to. But yeah, the idea of the movie Nope having kind of this infraterrestrial life form.
Right, you got that
it's
much.
Conscious cloudage. Is that a way to a conscious?
No, it's within the cloud. It's hiding in the cloud. So it's like basically like, but it's an organism. Correct. And that's the point.
So is that what happened when? Because there were 6 bolts of lightning that hit just out in front of the White House, and it didn't hit the building or like the top of the building or the giant metal fence around the building. It hit something made out of wood that was shorter than a lot of other things around it. And in 6 bolts, again, when you type that into Google or Bing, it says, no, that doesn't work that way. But that's what so does that mean there was something hiding in the cloud that it was Roger Stone has a video where he swears at night, if you look over the White House, there's a glowing something, and it might be, a result of sending microwave energy and information up and down, or, but again, I have an architectural background, and I've done a lot of walkthroughs on job sites when they're installing the last pieces of that lightning protection system, and they are not joking around when they do it. And so again, if you were like gonna try to force all the good men that were intelligent to like get some experimental shot, and they quit instead, what would happen is draining the swamp. If you have an aquifer moving under something like a coastal city, eventually a lot of charge builds up. And if someone on their way out of work happened to unplug part of that system and you don't know where it is, good luck. Right. And again, maybe they debugged it or maybe not. But I still, no one has provided any sufficient sense of befuddlement at the fact that A, it was 6 bolts of lightning, and B, why did it hit the tree? There was a building and a metal fence right there. In my understanding, it would be
Better
attractive to
grounding.
them. So
Better
not only
grounding
did someone
because the
maybe
tree-
unplug something, but they might have booby trapped it even.
or the tree is better grounding because the root structure is broader, so it has more place for it to dissipate into. It's plausible. But did you guys ever see that article? Bacteria on the radio DNA could act as an antenna or anything like this. I mean, so theoretical physicists have proposed an explanation for how bacteria might transmit electromagnetic signals. Chromosomes could act like antennae with electrons traveling gene circuits to produce species-specific wavelengths. It's just a hypothesis. At this point, it's more than a hypothesis. I think I've got papers.
Didn't Robert Downey Jr. start growing that on his neck in the Avengers? It was like there was something that was in his body that started to self-organize into like a microchip or something.
The thing is, it's like the idea of sending data through lightning is feasible. You can do it. And through laser, we're already doing that. We have balloons with lasers that are sending high speed 32 gigabit, internets, but they've also got that going through sending data transmissions live of genes, right? So they can send from one. Did you see Blackstone bought Ancestry.com? Blackstone.
You did bring to kind of one up what you're saying about the brain being an antenna, and out even beyond what any chips or something. There's a, call it torture, or again a tradition. I've seen an X-ray of a child's skull where there are like 40, maybe just 20 pins that are about this long that have been inserted, unfortunately, into the child's brain, and the child's alive. Again, the brain kind of healed around it. We know that there are certain sensors that they put in by just kind of, but in theory, maybe that child does pick up on certain frequencies and gets goosebumps before he can smell petrichor. I don't know. Again, don't try this at home, kids. But
I was trying to just send this image here, but yeah. So you get the idea. This is
how much work it takes to open Pinterest. I don't understand these people.
Right, I know it's annoying, but this came from the subliminal synchrosphere. He was an Irish guy. I don't know his real name, but he went by Horse Lover Fat in reference to Philip K. Dick. But he just did the simple English gematria, which I'm not always a fan of, but this is incredible nonetheless. Of just taking the titles from 2001: A Space Odyssey and working out what they add up to numerically, and what you get is 777, which itself corresponds to the numeration. Sephiroth means numeration, by the way, but it's
also the sign of the beast. On a Monster Energy drink, there's like 3 scratch marks, and
it's three Vovs, which would actually be like six plus 6, so to speak. But yeah, so so you have this movement of the lightning flash in the Kabbalistic tree, total 777. These are the planets in order that we move through. Obviously, you're moving through the solar system from Earth in the film. So this is also relates to the hemispheres and all these things that we're discussing. But yeah, it's a significant diagram to share, I think, even though it's media or whatever. But it's pretty crazy.
Have you heard of Newton's flaming laser sword?
No.
It's not actually, there are depictions of him holding something that looks like a lightsaber, but it's actually a philosophical and conversational artifice where you're kind of slicing away the most improbable pieces and then examining what you're left with and continuing to do that with like large swaths based on certain corollaries or assumptions that you're kind of agreeing to make together until you get down to the nut meat, as Colbert would say in the issue.
Totally.
You feel it in your crumb. I'm sorry.
It's related to the flaming sword that guards the way of the tree of life after the fall. And so I
totally think Newton had a flaming laser.
So the fall is perpetual. The way that the meaning of the sword of the dimensions, like, so it's my knocking. So it's basically like there's hidden dimensions, so to speak. That's a lot of what the Kabbalistic tree communicates. So it's like and we're relating to things on a very in a very linear way, and even representing the tree
the
way,
real
it's
story. What you're talking
misleading.
about, it's not linear. It's overlapping, and for hundreds of years they pretended that this was a joke or like a false interpretation. And I know, of course, Isaac Newton didn't invent a flaming laser sword. There's no such thing as but now you go to the Hacksmith channel here on YouTube, and they're like giving them away as a fan contest, and you can buy I don't know if you've looked into the Hacksmith channel, but it went from cute attempts to replicate superhero tech and cosplay reasons to I hope that they're surrounded and being monitored so that no one escapes with it. But they're publishing the the schemata basically for this shit.
I like
And
the
it keeps
question
getting
of
smaller
David
and
Duke
smaller
Mock.
and more portable. Soon,
feel
like
like-
protest in the future is going to be people with a subwoofer speaker in their hand, and you're going to walk up to someone and just say, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" And like, you know, it's
Like New York.
all I have to do is like squeeze my ass cheeks together, and the battery that I've got hidden up there is going to activate, and it's going to melt your face, dude. Like, back off. You don't have to draw a weapon necessarily.
Speaking of dystopic
Boomba.
futures, Elizabeth Holmes seeking new Theranos trial, raising doubts about Star Witness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, you guys remember Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos? Is that like a thing that everybody cares about? Or is that like a local girl does bad kind of story?
Joe Scott, another YouTuber, did a feature recently saying that it wasn't a complete fail. There were some positive things to be extracted, but I haven't gotten
yeah.
God, I watched that documentary. That shit's crazy, man.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, though, because you had to have tons of money. You got to be buying some good equipment.
Yeah, I made a meme
You
with
guys
her.
know
Where
Joe Scott or not?
I just wrote "Trust the Science" with her face. You know.
Yeah, right.
Is she a product of Massachusetts? I feel like she's got to be. She went
I
to
thought she's
college.
from
there,
Los
at least.
Altos, right? She's
Oh, I might be wrong.
She's a Stanford dropout, is what I recall. I mean, she grew up, you know, around here and had tons of money.
She's put forward as kind of epitomizing the quintessence of everything wrong with the modern woman that's been.
No, I was gonna say Silicon Valley.
Of this, or like
How can I say the wrong,
falsely idealized version.
You're saying it, dude. That's the thing. That's what I'm talking about. It's that it reminds me of like the Purusha and the Prakriti thing, where they're like, these are eternally separate, and people are like, because they want to relate it like it's the same thing as like Maya and Brahm, which we were discussing with our friend relatively recently. What's his name? Jumping Monkey guy. We talked. What the fuck? I want to give him a shout out.
Mayan, as in Mayan Brahm?
Nolan. Okay, so that's the thing, is that you're relating to something that, or it's like having a parallel processor and a serial processor. Like that's like the thing with like the two hemispheres, so to speak. So you have one side that's just compartmentalization, and that's what it knows. That's where the fall exists. The fall doesn't really exist on the other side because that's never really left, you know, in a sense. But you know, they're mutually interdependent. And so, like, that's the thing with
I've heard that computers are superior to the human brain in that way, is that they can parallel process and have multiple processors, whereas the human brain, we might think we're multitasking, but there's autonomic reflexes. But see, I accept that. I've kind of always held that as a universally accepted truth because my older brother told it to me when I was like at an age where I was starting to be interested in these things. And again, that older brother effect of just hearing it and it being imprinted as true, but who's to say that the human brain can't?
Right. I just see something.
I don't even know what that means. Really,
this is somewhat at the root. This is somewhat at the root of COVID hysteria, which extends into many avenues of life, but it's this conflation of technology and biology, and people who are very knowledgeable when it comes to technology like to displace that knowledge directly into biology as though natural processes worked the same way, and they still are like ultimately mysterious. And it's this thing of like, we want to assert that something still has that there's no mystery left in it, and that's just not the case. Like when it comes to what we are,
like the PCR test in particular, if you are familiar with the occult or mythical history surrounding the concept of a machine, that if you put the littlest bit of something into it, that magical machine would multiply it again and again and again and again until there was a lot of it. And it's like supposed to be something that doesn't exist, because that's not how things work.
No. But that's
what the PCR test posits to be. Whether the guy that claims to have invented it died or was murdered.
Carrie Mullis.
You got to go back to the seed and the kernel. And as you're saying, it's this multi-layer thing. And it's not that there is one right answer, but missing that information that this might be a practical joke being played on you by someone who lived 2,000 years ago, and it's being recycled by their great-great-grandchildren, and you're falling for it again. But go ahead.
Well, Carrie Mullis's explanation of that, like he himself related it to the test, like as an allegory. He equated it with the Buddhist notion that everything is in everything else, like moon in a dewdrop. You know what I mean? Like what most koans kind of point to, you know, Zen koan. So it's this idea that, you know, yeah, the magnification thing and cycle threshold and all of that. The tests don't work quite the same way that they used to, but in principle, you're still dealing with the same thing ultimately. And so, yeah, there's an argument for the over 35 threshold deal for sure. But yeah, I mean, yeah,
your dulcet tones and soft melodic voice is a great counterbalance to my exasperated blowhard approach. But hey.
Dynamicism.
It's called being a masshole. I can't help
Dynamicism.
I was born this way.
Well, how about the geophysical year? Let's talk about synchronicity. So, International Geophysical Year was an international scientific project that lasted from July 1st, 1957 to 31st of December, 1958. When you start looking into this group, it's something I've been kind of interested in recently. The International Polar Years were held in 1882. And if you go into that, they have a group that eventually created this new group saying we need to, you know, and so they divided or they galvanized, and then the members who included them, Lloyd Berkner, Sidney Chapman, Fred Singer, Harry Vestine, meeting in James Van Allen's living room and discussed the idea of a new synchronicity that would be a synchronicity to rule them all, right? And it would be.
Did you say Polish? Is this related? Did I mishear that?
Polish. I don't recall.
No,
polar year.
You know, it's like I made. I posited that Spanish was a way to refer to people that lived on the ocean in the span between the continents, and like that's why. I mean, that's. And then they settled. They like claimed Spain eventually. And so the people who, if you went to a child and you handed him a globe and said point to Poland, he would either be here or here. And so then maybe they did eventually.
What's the name of that seagull from Little Mermaid? Because that's like, remember, he's like, this thing right here is a genuine thingamajiggy, and it's for this purpose. And yeah, I feel like that's, I like that character. He's good.
And Ariel, the mermaid, right? She had it's a whatchamacallit or an
angel.
A siren.
Angel,
she had her collection of like human items, right?
She becomes an angel of the air.
She's a siren with the name of an angel.
Yeah, she does go.
Yerba mate. It's spelled Yerba, but when I read Che Guevara's his biography, his parents grew yerba mate like herb, H-I-E-R.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Can I share an anecdote about Che? Was my woman who I lost my virginity to was in Sweden, and her father was like very close with Che Guevara. And he had a stack of like photo books with him with Che and all these different scenarios. And he told me, he goes, I can't get his accent right, but he's like, you see that bed? He's like, I had sex in that bed. Che was in the room. Like, I'm like, say what? Like he was all stoked that his daughter was seeing an American, you know, like, so I never experienced this thing where like, you know, I was 18 years old and you go to a woman's house that lives with her parents, a girl's house who lives with her parents. She's like 6 years older than me, but she's lived with her folks. And like, just like they're like, for them to be, oh, spend the night, please. You know, like that's not something I was used to, you know.
What I find amazing about communists is like anytime I go into
my own parents never treated me that way.
Anytime I ever go in, like,
they both kicked me out of their house. What the fuck was I supposed to do? Oh, sorry.
Anytime I ever go to like the house of somebody and they've got like communist parents or something, they've got like a communist reading room and everything. It's just really funny to me because it's jarring, right? Because if it was like a bunch of German paraphernalia, this wouldn't be okay, you know? Right. But they're like, yeah, this is totally cool. I've got a little, I got a monument to a dictator in my room.
Kenny versus Spenny, you know? And then you're like, this is just, you know, this is how they roll. They're, you know, it's a joke, you know, whatever.
I guess, yeah. I mean,
it could be a cultural, or it could have been unique to her family that they were that welcoming.
Yeah,
I remember Michael Malice making a joke about Americans versus Russians, and if you're over at a friend's house and they're gone, and the doorbell rings and you're an American, you like hop right up. You're, oh, hey, how are you? I'm sorry, I'm here. I'm staying there. Whereas in Russia, you don't move for like 10 minutes and you're just dead silent if that doorbell rings and you're at someone else's house. You don't answer that door, let alone make a noise for a minute. And again, I think it was Lex and Michael tossing that one back and forth. And I think maybe it's funnier if you're on their side of the equation, whereas the joke doesn't land on our side somehow. But
I don't know. I don't know. So wait. The thing I was gonna say though. So with the geophysical year, you've got these guys from Wisconsin and from Minnesota that moves to Canada, both of like Swedish descent and connected with some Swedish. Where was the guy I saw a second ago? Fred Singer. No, he's from Austria. But there's a group of dudes, and this is the north of England, that are all associated with this idea of creating this unified organization that's about synchronicity of time, saying that we need to have our singular time and that everything's going to happen around when we say this moment. And ever since then, we've been going by the geophysical year. It's the thing that sets us up. And that's what's telling us when years are spinning faster or whatever they're supposed to say, when things are going.
We covered this a couple weeks ago when VBDC and Pink Trip were on. I think it was posited that we may eventually. He was saying in 10 years, you're going to walk down the street and ask someone if they know what daylight savings time is, and they're going to look at you like you have three heads. And I said, taking it one step further, right, a unified time. It really, it's one of those things. It's like America switching to metric. It's obviously the superior solution. Yes, it's uncomfortable at first if you're changing halfway through, but when it's like a new pair of underwear. And who makes that decision? I don't know.
I mean, it'll start with like Scandinavian robots. You're gonna with the my.
Do you have the time crystal, Andreas? Do you have it?
Everybody has a time crystal or a piece of quartz in their device that's keeping a clock. That's what's crazy.
I've got my eye on you, Mr. Plate. I think you're hiding the time crystal for Andreas. Because obviously, whoever has the time crystal would be the one to make that decision, right? But is it like Foursquare? If you get to the head square, you can just reinvent the rules again. And
I'm first. There you go.
Somebody asked a question of me earlier, and I don't know if they're still listening, but they asked
competitive adult Foursquare. Sorry,
they asked about gematria. If I studied gematria. But I transcribed the Zohar with an elderly rabbi for over a decade, and a lot of that had to do with working out gematria, all kinds of things. Gematria was a huge focus of mine for years. But that's what I was saying about that diagram that was showing the 777 thing with 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's using English gematria, and we have like Eddie looks at that stuff. I don't usually like do that.
Is gematria purely numerical, or could you? Is it geometric too? Is it spatial and geometric, or is it purely that kind of analog numerical?
David doesn't do gematria. Gematria does David. There's a Marilyn Manson.
That's funny because David. Yeah. Anyway, basically, when you're looking at numbers, they weren't correspondent with letters when letters were first introduced as we know them coming from pictograph. They were the letters. So we didn't our way of writing out numbers was the alphabet. So you
got to admit it must have led to some confusion. And
I think the opposite. I think moving away from that is what led to confusion, because now we do it unconsciously. So it's just that way no matter what. So that's why I was saying like Sephro means numeration. So when you're looking at that of what the Kabbalistic tree points to, it's dealing with language specifically. And then that's, you brought up Babel, like that relates to Babel. So you're basically you're looking at one aspect of something that's subject to change, while something else within it is absolutely
the same way that ancient Chinese script is not been deciphered in the modern day. Hebrew, as we know it today, was invented in some like Latin in the 1800s, or wasn't in common use.
Right. Well, there
is an argument put forward. I don't know who it was, but that the Old Testament could just be a random string of characters that has been. Our minds will fit that pattern to that shape. And we've, over the thousands of years, this is the story of that and that. And actually the language emerges somehow to match that. But.
Right. Well, as William S. Burroughs would say, how random is random. So and when this is the kicker.
100 monkeys typing.
The kicker is that we relate, generally people relate to math like something that we invented. No, we invented the symbols to represent and articulate math, but math itself was discovered. So like, and if you delve
True
into
that.
like the planetary squares of like of the Babylonian what we call magic squares, like, and what you can actually do with those, like a lot of people don't even realize, like you can twist it and you can form a spiral. Like it's like in each one
And
will fit
the nested platonic solids
yeah.
actually representing the distance that the planets are on. So
Right.
if you nest them in a certain order, they create a spatial, proportional arrangement that somehow actually is played out in macrocosm.
Right. So this is the oldest math on the planet, the oldest arithmetic on the planet, and yet it's the most. It's like some of the most profound. So
that to me looks like the square in a Rembrandt etching, where each line, it's like a Sudoku puzzle, and it's called a perfect square. And
right.
Rembrandt would just
definitely related to the Kaaba, though. It's the Kaaba stone, because
rumor has
Rembrandt
it that Benjamin Franklin came up with like a 16 by 16 square that somehow matched up to this, adding up in every direction to the same number. And
right. So
it was one of these, like,
yeah.
I was like reading into this and was already having trouble accepting that it was possible to do at a certain scale. And then it's like, oh, and by the way, have you seen this?
Right, but you want to take that square and basically
and it was there all along
and fold it into a cylinder, and you go up in one direction diagonally, and the numbers will all stay, going from lower to higher consistently all the way through, and you move to the next row over. It'll keep doing that. And then the different squares fit into each other. And as far as I can tell,
the Old Testament can be folded up and read that way. Yeah,
I've never
into a three-dimensional object. Yeah,
I've never heard anybody say this, but my assessment when I look at that and how you can actually form it, I actually found this from a Protestant man who did a presentation on the.
No, there's a guy on YouTube. 1983 is when he filmed the video, I want to say, and it was in Newton. It was a guy actually from the same place that I grew up, and he puts forward this theory also that when you, as a waveform, if you assume that there's some sort of four-sided reflective like screen output, that the Hebrew characters somehow may be designed to fit into a type of computer readout. They had the guys with like the crystal blocks on their chest, or
right. So the 36 square mile grids that are the standard for cities that came, I don't know if it started with Rome or if it's from before then or what, but I know that the Romans did this, and it's one of the things. It's like every time they would take a place over, they would change the city structure to be a certain way. And so there's an argument that the East Coast of the United States, they call it the selling of the corporation, where basically I forget what states it involves exactly, but there's actually Babylonian mathematical grid that's actually like applied to the city, to the structures themselves, all the cities forming this larger thing. And
some of it's been washed out, and some of it's still there.
Another square within another square. And basically, this is where I was going to go with this, is that as far as I can tell, this seems to be indicative of how Babel, the Tower of Babel, was represented in old paintings like Albrecht Dürer and whatnot. So when they show you that twisting spiral thing that's going up, I speculate that that's actually related to these planetary squares and how they fit into each other and how they really work. Because it's, yes, you can do that with the vertical and the horizontal lines, where with the 666 sun square, you everything works.
I like the juxtaposition as opposites of the rectilinear square type grid system, and then the opposite of that being this kind of skyward reaching, spiraling, softer form.
So there's that distinction between when you're looking at the I Ching in terms like mathematically, like what the I Ching is. You have 64 hexagrams that are formed from taking 6 straight lines and 6 broken lines and forming into single 6 figures in every possible combination, of which there are 64. But when you're dealing with that, you're dealing with the same thing that we see in cell division, and when you get to the original 8 cells. So how you get like a star tetrahedron, because it takes 6 straight lines and 6 broken lines to form a star tetrahedron three-dimensionally, right? Which is the only way to represent it. And so basically, when you're looking at the Kabbalistic tree, you're looking at the same principle, because that's a sphere. So that's showing you if you're introducing distortion into any point of the vector, so the vectors within the sphere, the lines of force will actually compensate on all sides in order to deal with wherever that distortion is introduced.
And all three of us probably have always kind of felt like we've had this mathematical competence to understand as like a baseline entry to mathematics that there is a difference and a distinct, understanding of the growth pattern if you describe it as linear growth versus exponential growth. But then the geometric growth is what's in between. And if you're doing a regressive curve on TV, they always try to tie it back to regress it to some sort of asymptotic hyper or exponential growth, which it does exist with growth in cellular growth. Yeah, like
right. So that's what you're
system.
looking. Yeah.
But
so that's the
when
I Ching,
the layman
though.
starts talking about infinity. I think it was one of the Weinstein brothers who was like, if someone wants to talk to you about God or infinite concepts, there's so many ways you could go with that. The easiest thing to do is to bring it to math. And there's so many different kinds of infinity. So if you want to use this word infinity and apply it to play with that word and bounce that word and concept back and forth with someone to see what their opinion is or what interesting theories they have about the infinite nature of the universe or of time, but it's like, but which infinity are you talking about? And until you're able to slow down enough and land here and now with me and actually listen to what again, you've always used it as a term, a placeholder for this concept, when in reality there are many infinities. And same with understanding the different types of growth patterns. Statistically speaking, when you're evaluating risk, someone who's not familiar with math could misread statistics and they're shaving half a percentage point off of the odds, but making a decision that takes on, that makes, a 10x or 100x increase in likelihood of danger or something. And
right.
I guess when you're playing sports or, you're trying to decide if you're going to dive for that ball or not, or going to collide with this person. When I was playing ping pong with my brother and he would miss a shot, he would always go, "Stop dividing by 0. Come on." Joking that his brain must have had some sort of glitch. And
all right.
Eddie
I play in ping pong.
Eddie made it. Oh, Eddie, we missed you. I was like, oh, Eddie working really hard right now. He's just he's grinding. He's grinding.
Eddie works for a gaming company. Is that correct?
No, I'm working on a streaming show, and I'm actually also freelancing on a feature film right now.
Wow, that's what I heard you talk. Okay,
so I'm kind of wearing myself thin a little bit. Too many.
Being involved in a large scale creative project one day.
Right. Well, I'll recap you really quickly. We were talking about the Ziggurat.
By the way, my name's Stefan. Nice to meet you.
Oh,
that's right. Stefan and Eddie. That's right. I'm working on it. But so the mathematics here, we're saying like the Ziggurat, the connections there with the math and the magic square. I brought up the International Geophysical Year. Not sure if you have any thoughts on that, but Taiwan was there, and that's a major reason why China PRC was not there, and a few other members didn't want to join because of Taiwan being there, interestingly enough. But so there's that, and then you posted something I wanted to cover.
Well, I did post something about the Magic Square yesterday.
Oh yeah,
it's actually about some of the Chinese origins of it.
Is it not this one? Because this is the one I was thinking, but I'll find another one.
That one was something else. That one was about the Mars coming to close proximity with Aldebaran, which is probably a bad omen, I think.
Coming in close proximity with Aldebaran?
Aldebaran, the eye of the angry bull of Taurus. And to me, it symbolizes a possibility of some kind of failure. Because if you look at
this Taurus, is it the I love you Taurus or the devil horns? I don't know.
It's actually the last unicorn of Taurus. But
last unicorn. Yeah, that's something else, right?
The Red Bull, yeah.
But I don't know. It's kind of it's just pure.
Red Bull doesn't just give you wings; you have to take it.
The unicorns are actually being held as the dew of the sea in The Last Unicorn, which is voiced by Mia Farrow, and it has Jeff Bridges. But the thing with the dew of the sea is that's the direct meaning of Rosemary. So to have Mia Farrow, Rosemary of Rosemary's Baby, playing a unicorn, trying to free the enslaved unicorns who are being held captive in the ocean by the Red Bull.
So you're saying unicorns are surface tension? Sorry, it's the evaporative pressure. No, it's the vapor pressure. That was the term from chemistry class. The vapor pressure is what exists right at the surface. Where it is sublimating directly into gas form, even as a spontaneous reaction, not due to heat.
Dude, Eddie, there was something I almost brought up earlier, but I didn't bring it up because I was like, I'd like to if Eddie was on the line, I'd like him to be involved in this. So Tony Scott. So we were talking about the Ergot poisoning stuff and Salem witch trials and stuff. So Tony Scott, he killed himself in a bridge in San Pedro
Yeah,
right, in LA.
The bridge is called Vincent Thomas Bridge. It's right.
Right.
It's actually right next to where I was born. It's connected to
Right. So that's
the Long Beach Naval
Well,
Shipyard.
he went there looking for a San Pedro cactus and couldn't find one, so he didn't know what else to do.
So here's the thing, because he was supposed to direct Maverick, Top Gun. He was supposed to be the director, and he was in the middle of working on the script and trying to do some casting and location scouting. That's what he was doing. He was on the location scout when he jumped off the bridge. So
right.
he actually.
So that's dude. So okay.
What would drive someone to do that is it's called three-dimensional trompe-l'oeil. In the same way, like the Roadrunner would run into a brick wall because the coyote had painted a road stripe up.
Right.
There are certain mountain valleys that if you're not flying by wire, using your judgment, you think that you're actually and so secretly, I think the first Top Gun movie was an example of the United States government contributing a lot of resources to a Hollywood production and kind of giving them a leg up when it comes to the wow factor of their movie, and they didn't have to pay for it themselves because the Army saw or the Air Force saw it as part of their advertising budget. But they actually lost whole squadrons of planes just disappeared because every time they chose the best pilot and told them to fly the Kessel Run, there was a big pile of planes in one place. And once you realized that and you couldn't stop it, you'd go jump off a fucking bridge, wouldn't you? Sorry.
Yeah. So I want to talk sync really quick. So first of all, just to speak to the Top Gun
pardon
thing.
my friend, Kitty. I don't mean to.
I'm with Quentin Tarantino on that one, where I'm like, just like his metaphor in the movie Sleep With Me. You can look up the clip. Quentin Tarantino, Sleep With Me, Top Gun. It's great. But anyway,
that's a very funny clip. Very funny clip.
Just to talk sync here, the day I have to look up what the date is, but the day that Tony Scott jumped off that bridge is the day that is the acknowledged day. I think it's actually a Catholic holiday. Is it Catholic? That would be messed up.
They declared his suicide a Catholic holiday? That's not very nice.
No.
It's sync.
So it's
the God of War.
It's the day that's attributed to the killing of the witches that were in what the story of the Crucible from Norman Mailer is based off of. Is it Norman Mailer? Or am I tripping? Arthur Miller. I don't know why I said Norman Mailer. Anyway, yeah. So those actual women who were killed that story is based off of, there's a day that's attributed to that execution. That's the day that Tony Scott killed himself. Tony is Anthony. Saint Anthony's fire is ergot poisoning.
Tony Armas played for the Red Sox. Tony Armas. That was his real name. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
you were making a much more profound point.
That's an interesting one.
He was probably high on ergot too. You know what I'm saying? Let's say acid.
Right. Well, I mean, whatever the case, it's like the place is named after psychedelic. It's the Rolls Royce of psychedelics, in my opinion. I'm all about San Pedro.
We all know.
Technically, IT-290 is according to Ken Kesey, and
San Pedro is often when it is like in an ayahuasca ceremony. More often than not, it's actually San Pedro, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I was in San Jose, or no, I was in Watsonville. I was somewhere. Was I? It doesn't matter. You shouldn't know. But I was going down a road, and on the side of the road, there was this huge, fence wall of San Pedro cactus. We're talking 120 feet, and they're all about 10 foot tall, 6 to 10 foot tall. I mean, but pretty dang tall, a lot of them. And so a friend of mine tries to get one, and I remember there's a Ron Paul sign in front of the thing. And one of them that the guy's getting falls and lands on my boot, and it goes through the spike, goes through into my foot like an inch. And so it's first off, apparently that works. That could get you to feel inebriated. And second, for the next 3 days, my foot was completely numb, starting with my leg up to my waist, down to my knee. Eventually, about 3 or 4 days later, it was just my toes, and then I was fine. But so careful.
Andreas, the substance that you just referenced in regards to Ken Kesey, that's the one that's shown in that documentary with the bus trip.
Right. When they go to Canada, they take IT-290. It's otherwise known as alpha methyltryptamine, or AMT, related to DMT. It's alpha instead of dimethyl, and so it's
Michael Cera in 2009, Crystal Fairy and the Magical Cactus. He steals San Pedro. No,
I have a thing with that with an album that I actually
similar.
Believe it or not, if you don't have a needle for your phonograph or your Victriola, one of the best stand-ins outside of a little piece of bamboo is, guess what? A cactus thorn.
Right. Yeah. That gets us into
talk about Antiquatech, and no, there's no evidence of it. Sorry.
Man, we were talking about frogs earlier too, and it's
So literally,
interesting.
if you take a piece of paper and make a cone out of it, and you take a cactus needle and put it in there and spin the record, you can hear it. And if you put that same needle and you duct tape it to a chopstick and you clamp it between your teeth, no one else can hear the record, but it's vibrating like a cochlear implant into your.
So do you think that the
ability to
cactus?
hear.
Do you think the cactus is using that? I mean, I don't know personally. Is it?
But why would they be so revered? Is because
right?
you don't cut them down, and it, even though they make you trip so hard. No, you need it there because it's your only way of
connecting.
When the jade disc shows up, you have to be able to play it somehow. And you need to make sure in the future that there is a source for these needles, because if you're in the Red Rocks area, what else would fill in for that missing object? I think there was kind of an international joke that there was a patent eventually for a sewing needle, a hollow tube needle, and the idea that this didn't exist until then is a laughable concept, and it is recorded as fact. But what it really was, it preceded the idea of the victriola or the record player or a groove with sound in it. But everyone, even when it was published, it was almost like, oh, we've almost revealed the technology that you all had probably seen, but still seems like magic and devil play to most people.
They say the CIA is 30 years ahead in general of the public's ideas around where we are with technology. I don't know how true that is.
I don't believe that at all. They got to be at least 100 years ahead.
Well, they're the one in charge of selling dope to get to fund the black budget.
We are the dope. Synchronis group. What was the thing you were talking about that you were going to pull up, Eddie?
Kids will smoke their sneakers if we don't give them weed.
No, there's something about the magic square. You see.
There we go.
Here it is. It's steps
there
of
it is.
you. So you is actually I'm kind of new to this. I just found out about it. It's like very early on Taoism back in the 4,000 years ago, where the first dynasty of China, one of the very first, is called Xia. Xia actually means summer. Xia Cao is the emperor of Xia dynasty. Actually, he's the one that I told you. Oh no, it's another fable. Well, he
is this the first emperor? There's an iconographic image that I've seen.
Not the one that connected the Great Wall. That guy's a tyrant.
No, but he was a man with a big hat. Like Colbert has this bit, but I think he's depicted wearing this kind of flat thing with frills on both ends of it.
Yeah, many emperors in China wear that. Yeah.
In the original drawing, when it circulated, it was a visual illusion. And if you looked at it one way, it looked like the hat was this way with the frowns on the side. And otherwise, you could have looked like the hat went this way with the frown. And so it was a very early example of a Mandela type effect, where depending on how you saw it or read it, there were two plausible explanations to the very same image. And it was meant to create this maybe meta moment where everyone stopped arguing about what the news was and just appreciated the fact that oftentimes there are more than one valid interpretation.
The pop-up comment there, Andreas, you should address that.
The frog-looking one?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting. So, anyone here? Why don't we all answer that? In what way have you guys consumed your frog? I've eaten frogs at Chinese buffets. Like
I have something about the squares and men with big hats too.
I lived in Peru and did the Cabo, right? Is that Cambo ritual? They call it a Cambo ritual.
Are you talking about 5A MEO?
You can get that on the internet. I'm talking about frogs, bro. But they do have psychedelic tryptamines in their skin. It's pretty weird, right? There's an island of poisonous. Yeah, of course. And then Peru, I was in Peru for like weeks doing that. Poisonous frog island. Let me go to this really quick.
It's when the shaman is using a straight tube to go blow that powder into the back of everyone's sinus cavity. And you're going, but how do you take it? And he pulls out of his pocket. It's called a U-shaped tube.
Oh, by the way, Eddie, this is reminding me. You sent some. Probably should talk about this separate, but the Steve Wilner thing. I'm down. We can discuss that further. But he probably wouldn't like this. But the night that I met Steve Wilner, I smoked frog venom with him. Now it's a different type of frog than what Andreas is talking about, but it's still the dimethyltryptamine.
Frog's a frog, you know what I mean?
Like Homer Simpson licked a frog in one of those episodes.
Frogs are delicious, though. That's the other thing. I mean,
I don't think these poison dart frogs are really that psychedelic, they'll kill you. These colorful ones you're looking at.
Well, so some of these super poisonous frogs, they've also figured are psychedelic, but yeah, they will kill you also because they have poison.
When
in
you
them.
lick things to experiment with them, like Carl Wilhelm Scheele, he only lived into his 40s, was one of these recent Tartarians. We may feature either.
Don't lick at home, you know.
But,
the
tragedy. He doubled the size of the periodic table, but he tasted it all. He knew which one tasted. Sorry.
The Cambo ritual is interesting.
Yeah, sorry for cutting you off, Eddie.
You know what? I realized my door is open. I better close it. Hold on.
The Cambo ritual, Cambo frog is interesting because, you know, they used to just kill the poor guy, and they figured there's a way that you can just scrape some off of his back a little bit and off of his tummy, so they don't have to kill the frog anymore. And supposedly that changed a lot of things about it.
What they figured out is that you could keep it pinned to a piece of wood and it would regrow. Come on, they figured out they didn't have to kill it. Come on.
Well, I mean, it's not just that. Like the idea of a bad trip being associated with murdering the frog.
Okay. No, that's I 100%. Okay. Yeah.
And you know, I have a theory about frogs because, well, this is part of it from the Rick Strassman's book, right? The DMD, the Spirit Marker. Basically, not a whole lot of animals have the third eye exactly composed like with the actual structure of a real eyeball, with retina and
there's some amphibians and turtles and salamanders that still have that structure.
Yeah. Especially salamanders and
but the Olm lost all eyes.
So and also their pineal gland is close to the top of the skull. So it's actually exposed to direct sunlight. So they actually they're I forgot the chapter that what it means when it's really close to sunlight. But they're
photoactive or photosensitive. Photosensitive.
Maybe photosynthesis.
When Guardian Leviosa. Yeah, no, it's cool.
We group reptiles into the same category in our minds as amphibians in terms of their intellectual capacity, perhaps, but I've observed this and read that turtles understand that they're going to freeze and check to see if you've spotted them, and then they might dip off and dive away. Whereas there's much more of just kind of a direct relationship between action and reaction when it comes to certain,
I think of reptiles including birds.
And the amphibians are just a little wiser. Yeah.
Birds and reptiles, they are the same, but they seem like very related. Like that's birds and reptiles. That's where we think of the fight or flight from. But amphibians, they're so much more. They live in multiple environments, so I think they're far more. They have to be far more aware of everything else going around to be able to navigate two ecosystems from one to the other.
Whenever I see a giant plesiosaur skeleton that's assembled, I'm going, that's just a fucking big turtle missing its shell, guys. What are you talking about?
Oh, David, I hope you're all right.
And T-Rexes are just kangaroos, right? They get these short little stumpy arms, and they didn't walk; they popped.
Maybe the fairy tale, Kiss the Frog and all that. Maybe there's something alluding to the princess.
Right? The amphibian. Joseph
Smith him into a prince. Was that, or what was the story? What was that story? Right?
Joseph Smith didn't talk
to George Bushing it in my mind. I'm trying to
Joseph Smith didn't talk to lizard people. He talked to amphibians, right? There was like a salamander.
Yeah, so people got killed for this thing because apparently it came out relatively recently in the last few years or something. There was like a bombshell around that where they found some writings from Joseph Smith where he was describing the alchemical allegory of the salamander and like all the meanings of everything. And because it's so entrenched in what has become of Mormonism that they were just like, they didn't want that to get out. So there's basically like a mob within the community that was like basically blew up some people's cars, I think, or something. It was like, don't tell them that the salamander was an allegory. We're taking this shit seriously. You don't want to legitimize Mormonism. We've gone too far in this way.
Right. Also, earlier you pointed, before we get too far from Crystal Cactus, there's a pretty good sync film that David did right here that you should check out. Super Beautiful Magic.
Yeah, so King Black Acid and the Crystal Unicorn, I did the cover art for them for this band. Wow. So yeah, they saw my stuff online. They contacted me, but I mean, as far as my sync films go,
this isn't the Toad that Hamilton Morris covered, right? Where they did come up with a chemical process to synthesize because the Toad became endangered and But the frog and the toad are different, I guess.
Michael Cera, I mean, he's in this film. Michael Cera.
Yeah, he stars in it. Yeah.
You know, I worked on Juno, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I worked on Juno.
I forgot about that.
I think I'm solely responsible to what happened to Elliot.
You know what's really funny?
I can't make heads or tails of that cover art, man. Good job.
What's that movie? Juno though? Is Juno the Korean movie?
I worked on Juno. I couldn't get the Jason Reitman, the son of Ira Reitman, couldn't get me into the union to start my new career path.
Oh, right before Juno came out, there was this movie called Jenny Juno, right? Which is a Korean movie, and it's about a girl who gets pregnant in high school. Shocking, right? So the entire movie's ripped off of this up to this point, and until you get to the end where you realize that
girls don't have uteruses in high school. They get them removed long before that. Sorry, that's a joke.
Depends on which country, but yeah, no. In this version, the whole community comes out to propose taking care of this couple to make sure that they can. So the school all holds hands, and they're going to, as a community, help raise the kid. And it was like statism.
Does this movie incorporate the Egyptian pantheon symbolism like Juno does, or no?
Elaborate, dear friend.
So there's like a classic sync film from, I believe it came from Will Morgan, where he analyzed Juno. It could be up at this point. I don't know. I'd have to ask him. But
not the Alaskan capital.
But yeah, no. There's the empty seat of the lover. So it's like the chair that's in the front, and then there's all this stuff. Him and his gold shorts. You'd have to see Will Morgan's video, but yeah, he did a good analysis of that movie and how it relates to Egyptian mysticism.
That's an interesting thing, man. Are we dead? Are we dead? Deading somebody by watching, like memeing someone by watching pictures of them in their older movies? Should we scrub history? I don't know. Sorry.
I don't know. So here,
do you ever go by Charles? Is it no?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Charles was my grandfather's name, and it's my cousin's name. But yeah, so
did you know that Fitzgerald is actually a combination of Fitz and Charles in some sort of Irish brogue? It's Fitzgerald.
Gerald,
and Bartholomew is the son of Ptolemy, like not Copernicus, but Ptolemy. So Bartholomew, who knew? And copper nickel. Copper nickel is like what you. Anyway, sorry.
So,
David, there I go again.
David, you had this. No, that's good. David, you had this thing. What is this thing here?
So this thing is like what I consider one of my more significant discoveries in my life is that if you take Aleister Crowley's first book of the law, there's 2 sections to the book of the law where he invites in the first section to challenge the book. So if you do, there's a kind of a Kabbalistic tool you can use where you weave things together. So it's just like when you fold your hands in prayer or whatever. I forget the Hebrew term for it. But for weaving. And so basically, if you insert the book of the law into
there's a Latin word meaning clothing
into Jim Morrison's American. So the way an American Prayer was written was that every few lines there was a dash, and so if you count those dashes, you can insert it into the book of the law, and it becomes this kind of conversation between Crowley and Morrison as to what constitutes the law for the new eon, which Morrison treats more as a prayer instead of a law. And so it's this entirely different take. So here you have the King of Wands, right? So
see, that sounds ridiculous to the lay listener. If someone's just tuning in, they think you're like off the deep end in this term. Sure. But in Boston, the scoreboard had these dots and dashes on it forever, and then only when the Yaki family sold the team did they reveal that that's actually their name in Morse code, and it had been there in plain sight the whole time.
If you've ever seen Jim Morrison's Ode to Nietzsche, you know what I mean? Like then you start to realize who Jim Morrison really was far more interesting than just like some rock singer. He played a rock singer on TV, but he wasn't even a musician. At first he was a filmmaker, right? And also a poet and a philosopher. He wanted a copy of Nietzsche's encyclopedia instead of a car. And then there's that whole thing with the Morrison Tonka is a good way to.
He wanted. Was he going to photocopy it page by page? I mean, I'm sure Nietzsche owned an encyclopedia.
Right, Tonkin incident.
Tonkin. Why is it a Tonkin truck? That's
Tonkin
hilarious.
Truck. Yeah.
George Stephen Morrison. He was a United States Navy Rear Admiral and Navy aviator. Jim Morrison's dad was definitely influenced in Vietnam by.
See, I would read that as Stephen, and it's not a Stu and a Steve thing. That was the Tao of Steve, the movie. Anyway.
Oh, so
in the fan encyclopedia, it specifically says to pronounce it Stephen, not Stephen, as though there was some significance. I feel like it's some. Whenever I bring up the word hope, my father said, "Yeah, that meant something different in our generation," but he'll never tell me what something means.
So I brought that up in the first place because, you know, long story long, was that, you know,
Just how we like it.
So here we have the King of Wands, right? So the King of Wands pictures a lizard by the side of the king with a like an Ouroboros style lizard like above the head of the king while he's sitting on the throne. So this is the lizard king, right? And so that actually connects to what you'd say if you were to translate the tarot into a regular playing card deck, which all you have to do is remove one of each of the royals and remove the 22 trump cards. You basically, like, so the decons astrologically, this connects to what would be called the Jack of Hearts, right? So the Jack of Hearts is the Prince of Cups. Prince of Cups astrologically connects to the King of Wands. So when you're hearing in Hyacinth House speaking to Apollo when he says, "Why did
one
you
is the harbinger of the other?"
the Jack of Hearts away?" It's very Synctank. Thank you. So yeah, so Andreas, if you can just like scroll down on this page just to illustrate, like, you know, this there. Keep going. So there's a picture here of a stone bust of Aleister Crowley with the doors surrounding it. This appeared on the back of their one of their final albums, 13, which was a compilation album approved by Jim Morrison while he was still alive, of which there was only 2. There was this, and there was Weird Scenes Inside the Gold Mine. So it being named 13 is interesting in terms of the 13th Arcana, what we call Death, which was the only unnamed Arcana in Marseille Tarot. So if you scroll,
these are anthology. You're saying when it's
right,
a mixed. A compilation where he himself went back through his work and picked the best of the best, and
yeah. So
the same way, like an artist will pick the order of the songs on any one album.
So yeah,
he almost did a retro. He contributed or approved of it. You were saying
totally. So if you scroll down a bit to the actual thing itself, like the keep scrolling down. Okay, see, so there, back at the top. So it says, okay, at the top you see Crowley, the manifestation of Newt. So Hod, the manifestation of Newt. So you have the first line of the Book of the Law. So like, and then Morrison had the celebration of the lizard. So I inserted that, and the rest just flows the way that it goes, of a back and forth communication. But I speculate that the thing about Crowley saying the manifestation of Newt, that Morrison's like, you know, the celebration of the lizard is actually another way of saying that, because it's like a play on words, that like Newt is like Newt, and then he's like, I'm the real lizard king, so that's lizard trumps the Newt. So he's like, oh, you're coming with the Newt while I'm coming with the lizard, kind of deal.
I am the great Cornholio.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. So it's like, yeah, and so it's just so you have Crowley says the unveiling of the company of heaven, speaking to the stars, right? So Morrison says, do you know the war in progress under the stars? Do you know we exist? Have you forgotten the keys of the kingdom? Have you been born yet, and are you alive? Every man and woman is a star. So you can go through this, and there's things that are so pronounced. So like when he'll talk about, like, Crowley will say, behold my light shed over you, and then the very next line from Morrison is, the moths and atheists are doubly divine. And you know, it's like, there's he says, Crowley will say, my incense is of wood, what is it, woods and gums, like
gum tree, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's resonance, woods and gums.
I'm sorry, Andreas, don't scroll. You see the children of men on the 5th verses.
Yeah. That was a movie where
I don't
we
know.
Forgot how to preserve the ability to reproduce.
Yeah, and actually, that's actually supposed to be next year. Next year is supposed to be the year of the children of men.
There you go.
Coincidentally, Rollerball was 2018. I don't know. But...
Oh, far out. Good to know. So, like, when he says that line, just to finish the thought, when he says, my incense is of resinous woods and gums, and then it's followed with Jim Morrison's line is, matchbox, are you more real than me? I'll burn you and set you free. So it's like, the call and response just at points of this just gets so ridiculous. And so, like,
to have a resin or a gum that is extracted sustainably means that there's someone guarding the tree and knows just how to injure it so that it can extract just a certain amount of this. I don't know if you've ever there's an arboretum here in the Boston area, and they have a whole variety of pine species. And if you get a little ball of resin, it's not pine tar. It's something that's much more dense, and it just leaves a beautiful. And
even like
lighting it on fire would be. Yeah.
Is it like a frankincense kind of thing, or isn't
yes.
that what it is?
Yes. Frankincense may be a derived from
frankincense. So based. Do you ever I got a vapor, the oil diffuser thing, and I started putting frankincense oil in it, and I felt like, you know, the wisest of the wise men. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Blasphemy.
A little bit of myrrh in that. Felt pretty good.
So you might have associations with that smell But
I
did you
do.
go to a church that burned
did.
frankincense on
Catholics
and,
did
and
stuff.
still, you know,
Catholics
Choir
did stuff
boy.
to me. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm an altered boy. That is for sure. So,
So instead of
when
like code
multiple
word, do you have
altars.
code spells? No.
when you say the moths and the atheists are doubly divine and dying. Oh, wait. There's a part also up here I didn't read aloud, but I thought was cool. Do you know we are ruled by the TV? The moon is a dry blood beast. Guerrilla bands are rolling numbers in the next block of green vine amassing for warfare on innocent herdsmen who were just dying. The cobs is in the coup, not the coup in the cobs. I mean, it's interesting.
See, this is almost
because-
like, is this Shakespeare or did AI generate this and we're supposed to believe that
No,
it's
it's a
intelligible?
very Crowley vibe. It's a British Crowley vibe. You've got this whole, hey, I studied.
Or was this him
Egyptian
showing
mythology.
off his speech, his CPT
It's showing off his
0.5?
his
Well, no,
fans
the connection is that Crowley's Book of the Law was channeled in Cairo following an experience of the Great Pyramid. So you have Morrison had the connection with the pyramids in South America. So he went to the Pyramid of the Sun, right? Is that correct?
What we call the pyramid, yeah.
Mexico.
Those were mercury distillation factories. They put cinnabar in between the layers, and when the natural electricity came up through, mercury would drip out of certain ports. And then they abandoned them because the site was toxic. And we built a giant city around it. Good job, guys.
Far fucking out.
At least with Crowley, he earned his honorary 33rd degree in Mexico, didn't he?
He didn't he have something where I forget what the details, but didn't he have to get approved by some other council because he was initially rejected or something? I forget.
Yeah, he was never honored in the Scottish Rite. So
I've seen the History Channel documentary that goes up to the point of explaining that they packed cinnabar in between these layers, but again, how do I get credit for being the guy that went, that's a mercury distillation factory? What are you guys looking at?
I've given up on credit a long time ago for most things. That's just whatever.
Or at least, how do eventually you add it to the list of things that nobody else cares about? But
if I do reverse image searches for my original stuff, man, it's just like I'll see stuff in Germany and freaking everywhere, and I'll be like, "What are they writing about there?" I don't know what the hell.
That's gonna be a great movie because eventually one of those guys is gonna become really popular in their little town in eastern Romania, and they're gonna be like, "No, I made all this stuff," and then that's gonna be this movie about the American guy who comes to the art exhibit. Like, what are you talking about?
To bring it back to the lightning, or Eddie? Sorry, Eddie was going to say something.
Big eyes with David.
I'm just trying to see if you want to, Andreas, you want to go back to my page?
Hold on. Let me jump.
There are two posts I want to see what you guys think. One, okay, whenever you load it. Yeah, one is about. Well, I just started to watch the House of Dragons. And,
right, I had a funny review. Some
leftist
one friend of mine was like, "This is the worst show, and if you're only interested in looking at blonde people be mean to each other, then watch House of Dragons." I don't know if that's true.
Or Cruel Intentions.
Well, I thought the timing is kind of interesting because the third episode that came out 2 nights ago, that was the battle against the Craft Eater. And also that was just that was the day that Artemis was supposed to be launched, but NASA failed again because
you said the crab eater, as in.
Well, it's called crab feeder because he feeds the enemies to his crabs.
Because a crab that is cancer. Cancer is the name for crab. Right? I know. I don't think that word had always such sharp meaning in the old days.
It is interesting that Artemis is named after like this moon warrior goddess. They're going on to goddess warriors now, like all the warrior goddesses, like the really strong, feminine, archetypical Roman characters, right? It's as opposed to Apollo. But yeah, they didn't tell you why. They're just like, we just had so many problems with it, which is not reassuring.
Apollo and Artemis are twins, right? You know they're twins.
Right. Which all makes more sense.
Charles's grandson was saying something about was it the lightning or no?
So I don't know. I'm just trying to. I did this little write up, which, but it was really weird because everything was happening around this time. Also, the CFO of the Bed Bath and Beyond also jumped from the building. I made another post about that, which is pretty bizarre.
Is that an alchemy thing? The bath you go into there?
Well, if the phone brainwashes you into a mode where you're either going to cut off your dick or kill yourself, it's identified as the murder weapon. What was the motive? That's the question. Why are some people immune and other people susceptible?
That's another
I
one.
love the
think
Alex.
below this
The Alex one was really funny. Yeah.
What's the Alex
That
one?
was pretty. That was crazy.
We should go back to this just for a second because it's so interesting to me. So basically, I don't know if I can play the audio for it.
It's only like 20
so
seconds.
But basically, what happens? This guy says
Well, it's
something to
only
the
20
effect.
seconds.
He says, like, do you feel? He's like, okay, I'll just use the subtitles. Do you feel responsible
All
for
gas,
what
no
happened
brakes.
to the Sandy Hook families? He says, I killed the children, but
I'll
beyond
say it
that,
because
no,
he's
I
probably
went
not
to
allowed
school.
to say it anymore.
Yeah. And so but the thing is, he said, no, I did it. I'm responsible. I did it. I'm guilty. I did it to the children. Oh, wait, no, I didn't. Okay, no, then I'm not sorry. And I'm tired of pretending I'm sorry. And I'm not going to apologize anymore, which was pretty cool. I like that.
Completely freaked out.
I think it was the right move. He's like, I paid a
was
lot of money to be able to say that I'm responsible for this thing I'm not responsible for. That happened.
So Mr. Play was noticing that people in other languages were potentially playing with his ideas and spreading the good word. But Benjamin Franklin in Lightning, he interpreted, I want to say, a work that was in French. When he wrote about how to ground a house or a building through a well with salt water in it, which may or may not have been a battery system in disguise, but he published the work in French. And it wasn't until like 80 years later that someone actually translated it into English, and America was like, oh, yeah, the lightning rod. I knew that the whole time, I swear.
Right, yeah. Lightning rods have definitely been around for thousands of years. Like, there's no way. I mean, there's people living in places getting struck by lightning, looking at trees, being like, hey, we need more of that.
It's not a species with amnesia, it's a culture. Yeah, we've got a bad case of it.
You said this guy from Bed Bath & Beyond jumps from the Jenga building, which is like their tower looks like the Jenga building. Jenga.
The interesting thing about this case is that because both Bed Bath & Beyond and GameStop, the last time I got banned from Facebook, if you remember, that was when I posted the Falling Man, the 9/11 Falling Man, because it was turned into an NFT by GameStop. So GameStop and Bed Bath Beyond, they both came up with these meme stocks. They were basically, it's the fraudulent,
GameStop really going there, really. So they made an NFT out of it, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, these companies are going bankrupt. They're going for broke. So they put out all these this ridiculous.
Well, I think there used to be a saying that any news coverage is good news coverage, and I believe we've moved beyond that era, or it's not as universally applicable a truth as it once used to be. And like there was someone in the marketing department who had been there for a long time and was like, I swear this is a great idea. Watch. Everyone's going to be saying our name. But, part of me thinks this is just the only reason that this news item exists in our Zertosphere or blogosphere is because Jenga bought a commercial. And the same way, it's a Tic Tac. It's a flying what? It's a flying what? It's a Tic Tac. And young kids don't know what Tic Tacs are, but now they do.
I don't know about this building. Is it a Bed Bath & Beyond building, or did he go to another building? What's the Jenga building?
It's let me go back. Is it? Oh man,
new construction that has a lot of interesting balcony overhangs.
It looks like
cantilevered up at the
I see what it looks like, and it's
on the ground floor.
But what I'm asking is that like a Bed Bath & Beyond building, or is that something else? What is that?
No, it's a resident building. It's like $5 million units, and the penthouse is like $55 million.
So what is it?
This could also be the witness protection program
apartment building.
Coming up with a plausible story to disappear someone who was being pressured to sell stock options and didn't want to, and he just was ready to retire.
Okay. So did he live
off the grid?
He lived in that apartment building, and he jumped off of his own floor. Is that the idea?
Yeah, but his wife was in the building when he jumped, so so she pretty much saw him jump. So it was pretty cool.
She pushed him, and freaking
yeah.
Eric Clapton when he threw that baby out the window, and they were fighting, and he was like, "I know it's Phil's baby." So, like, just thinking
it was freshman year in college.
Just like,
she's in the graveyard, and it was a young woman who was going, "I can do anything. This is so great. I'm feeling so bad." I'm going, "Yeah, but you can't fly." And she got this look in her eyes, like, "Wait a minute," and like facetiously implying that no, maybe I'm going to go try it. And it's like, you got to be careful. People are very suggestible. Maybe maybe he was listening to some R. Kelly and he thought he could fly, or no, I don't know.
Well, let's do one more. I know we're at 2 hours, but I'm curious about this, Eddie. What is the deal with the ghost plane?
Okay.
Is the ghost of Kiev?
Or the building's lightning protection system doesn't exist, and he was being zapped with electricity, and the only thing he could do to escape this shock. The old Lowell Mills, there are apartment buildings where certain units have to have static dissipative floors put in because there's water moving underneath it, and every step you take or everything you touch, there's a shock.
Just any way to get out of this game, just zap me out of here.
Right.
Or there's those little vibrating buttons you put on the windows, and it turns the whole window into a speaker. And he thought it was the voice of God booming through, and said, "God told
you guys have
those,
if anyone has those, send me one, please." I think
I'm waiting for my alarm clock to be that someday. Yeah, someone. It's like my head's right next to a window, and someone's just gonna.
Right.
So
it's one of those things that they.
So just real quick. This news case, okay, because if you guys remember in 1999, there's a golfer. His name is Payne Stewart. He was flying in his own. It's not a Cessna. It was I think it's a stream. What is that?
Jetstream.
So he was flying. Yeah. So what happened was that he was flying, and then suddenly the pressure in the cabin just dropped. Like basically the pressure system just completely just broke down. So everybody on board basically ruptured, froze to death for one, but also all the irons would pop out of the sockets. So this guy.
Well, and the pressure might not just drop down to what it is, but if it's moving, there might be just a total vacuum being reached because air is being drawn out through some interesting Bernoulli type effect.
Yeah, it's vacuum, and also it instantly freezes everybody because the temperature immediately drops as well. So this is a Cessna that that was flying across the Baltic. So both these planes basically were flying autopilot. The other one was flying 1,500 miles. Nobody could stop it. Jet fighters, the F-16s
Andy showing up at closing time.
They shot it down. Yeah, exactly.
Where's a tractor beam when you need one? I mean, really?
It's pretty punk rock.
Wow. Basically, so that's why it's called.
Well, is that an argument that every plane should have a mechanism that towers can kind of tap into the electronics and fly it in the event that both pilots have an aneurysm or there's a rapid depressurization, and at least they can make it not crash into a populated area? But again, as soon as you put that back door in, someone's going to be working to exploit it. So.
The reason why the Gulfstream was about to get shot down by F-16 because it was about to cross the Canadian border. So that's why they say, "Hey, the Canadians, hey, who is in this plane? You better do something about it." So,
man.
But they let it crash. It crashed in North Dakota. It didn't end up. I think it ran out of fuel. So
I met a frogman once who explained to me that they did a calculation that running wires from the wings to the cockpit and controls at it and all the way up and down to the tail and everything represented such a weight in wireage, even at very thin wires, that it just made more sense to do wireless connections between the controls and the cockpit. And that's really why they shouldn't really allow cell phones on planes. Yeah, turn them off. That's going to.
Well, I was about to shut it down, but then Andy showed up, so I want to ask Andy, what have you been up? What have you been up to? And is there like a thing that you've been thinking about? You want to like help us close with the topic, man?
Oh man, well, what I've been up to is I've just been working my balls off. Today was horrible. That's why I was so late.
Oh, but there's someone. I totally missed that. Hey, what's up?
What's going on?
Is Andy of the Fit Chair podcast? Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, I've been kind of all over the place, man. The guests I've been having on lately, I've been literally going from ancient history to alchemy to magic to all over the place. So I could just go off on anything right now.
The whole Zertosphere. That's what, not the Tartaria. It's a new way we're referring to
the Zertosphere.
The soup to nuts aspect of.
Well, I saw what was it when I saw
subject matter we cover here.
I ramble a lot online, so yeah, you can pull anything from there.
You just did that talk with Chaz of the Dead on a place between time and space. What do you think about In Between Time and Space? Let's talk about that for a second.
A Place Between Time and Space, Chaz's new book is fucking mind blowing, man. It's all about this Bet sphere case that I had never heard of before. I don't know about any of you, but if you're into the ufology at all, it's kind of a slap in the face. This case is like over 40 years old, and it's about this metal sphere that supposedly shows up on this island off the coast of Jacksonville.
I think Woody Allen found that, and it gave you an orgasm when you touched it. And
it's also in
sometimes
Heavy Metal.
That
though,
wasn't a movie.
The movie Heavy Metal animation, right? They have the sphere. It's a metallic sphere that goes green, right? What's a sphere? There better be some.
It's called the Lochnar.
Lochnar. There we go.
But yeah, so I mean, regardless of what you think of the paranormal or the UFO topic, I mean, to me, I look at it from all angles, including that it's all a fucking narrative, fake story being handed to us. In some aspects, it feels that way. So, regardless of that, what's interesting is that the location of the Go Fast and the gimbal UFO videos, the UAP videos that were released from the government to the public.
Is that an underage attracted person? Oh, no, that's the new term for a UFO. Might be.
Yeah. Yeah, those
Dude,
videos.
Is this Ron Howard? Ron Howard as a boy playing with the Lochnar? That's how it all happened.
It explains a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, the locations are synchronized between these government released UAP videos and this Bet's Sphere story from this Neff house that happened so long ago. So it's really interesting. And that location had a history of weird encounters, including lights and orbs and shit like that. And it's the same friggin' naval base that handled the Nimitz footage and all of that now, acting like, whoa, this is the craziest thing we've ever experienced.
It's probably just swamp gas, and it's not that it's glowing with plasma, it's that they're breathing the swamp gas in like the Oracle of Delphi. You see a lot of that. Part of an initiation to make you believe in God.
It's funny though, like a weather balloon, a balloon made of weather, or a swamp gas monster. Like these are both things that the 50s movies were about, really, that were like, hey, probably the closest thing to this idea of between time and space, there being something that is hyper dimensional or whatever that means, like a neutrino being able to cut through different places to be, multiple places at the same time, entangled. Or what do you think, Andy? Is that what you're thinking, or where are you going with this?
Well, what I'm going with is that it's that I simply stated that the government is desperately trying to get ahead of something, maybe, or something that we're becoming more aware of, perhaps. But either way, like the fact that the most famous and like broadcasted and pushed on the public UAP cases are in this area with a rich history that has never been talked about at all. So honestly, it's just an interesting thing to put into the whole topic that I had never heard before. But just the fact that it all lines up, it's almost like they're trying to, as they often seem to do, kind of just narrow the reality tunnel. Like, yep, they're gonna eventually look at this, so let's talk about these one or two items and just base the whole thing off that, so no one looks at anything else.
I think it's called obscurantism or obscurantism. It's kind of like obfuscation. It's actually a type of propaganda meant to dumb down the information that's readily being passed around as like the top three facts about something. Sorry, Andreas, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we talked earlier already. I'm just reiterating about the Solomon Square, or maybe more about the Babylonian magic, math magic, right? But this is important. This idea of building a time machine or a spaceship, because it's a space that you're safe in, and then you've got a certain amount of travel and distance and places that can be reached that are intersecting according to that, multiple vectors. I think someone yesterday asked about, what does that mean? Multiple converging vectors in a matrix. Well, that is as a broad concept as it can be.
That's the definition of a magic square, is that it's not like the four corners or any group of four numbers, or there's different patterns. It's not just the vertical and horizontal lines that all add up to the same thing.
Well, it all goes in one direction. So they say, like, Keter has two right sides.
You guys,
what's that?
Go for it, Eddie.
You guys all seen Contact, right? Carl Sagan.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It was the anniversary.
Why build one when you can build two for twice the price?
I think I just saw Hunter Biden's Contact on my phone. That was my. Did you mean?
Oh, well, what's his name? Not Dr. Haggins, right?
Sure.
Haggins, he had that quote, right? When they're trying to find the primer of the schematic, how to put the machine together, right? All the signal, they got all the 2D graphs of the entire machine, but they don't know how to put it together, the blueprint.
Yeah, there was
he
one
said
line of
that
code that was running
have
on the
to think-
bottom
you
of
have to
Hitler's
think.
speech, and then they needed prime numbers to kind of assemble it into
Yeah,
schematics.
but
right?
the one thing, the most important thing he said was that you got to think like a Vulcan, where you have to think like an alien 3-dimensionally or multiple dimensionally, because this map is not a flat 2D map. Yeah, this is the way that I think, the way I feel the same about people saying flat Earth, round Earth, but it's really about the vantage point. How do you perceive the dimension? How do you assemble it? So
Again, to someone who's never been exposed to topographic mathematics, flatness isn't just, again, like Rick, it's not in Morty. It's not just about a square of concrete. It's about the idea that it's not the Pac-Man universe. That was the analogy that Andreas was making. That's like a toroidal thing, where if you leave one side, you come back on the other, which implies that it's not flat,
right?
In a certain direction or dimension.
But it's like it's folded.
Give it
you have multiple folds. Where was that tetrahedron GIF I saw earlier? Right?
It's Eric Weinstein who has the 3-dimensional model of like a bunch of nesting. It's like 3 different versions of Earth that are doing this beautiful dance and constantly folding in on itself and fractalizing. And I think that's a great representation of some sort of compromise between this endlessly unfathomable, 10-dimension, 14-dimension realm that we seem to occupy, and the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional models we tried to.
Yeah, you look at the model of the platonic solids, how they stacked up together. They have intersection. They have the vectors, like we're just saying, the vector where they intersected. Where it's the same thing with they talk about the magnum opus, the great work. How do you the symbol of that, right? How you circle the square and all these things. It's the same concept. It's just like you got to really expand the geometry of.
Yeah, you have to add another dimension into it, because when you're relating to it on the in the way that we are, that's one of the problems when we're looking at a lot of the diagrams. It's because it's not really representational. So like that kind of 2-dimensional representation of the Kabbalistic tree is really misleading, because you're not just looking at something that's even 3-dimensional. You're looking at something that's like transcendent on a certain level, because it's actually like you have a sphere and then you have the dividing. And so like it communicates something about language, the way that we have to compartmentalize in order to gather information. So and it's not like the Kabbalistic tree is ever represented like you
don't have to, but it's helpful to keep the information sorted in
the Zohar. So the Zohar never actually really depicts the Kabbalistic tree. It describes it, and people have artistically gone to represent it. But you're literally relating to the same way that planets twist through space with the sun as the sun moves through space. But it's not just that. It's like when we're talking about, like as I was saying earlier, like when you're talking about like the I Ching, you're talking about like the basic dynamics of the vacuum. Like you're looking at the compensation of the vectors when distortion is introduced. When you're looking at the Kabbalistic tree, you're actually looking at 2 cubes. You're looking at that thing that was described in the I Ching, but then extending further into how it is that we relate to that. So it takes the same principle.
Well, an understanding going from 2 to 3 dimensions might be the difference between linear and geometric, but that once you start going above that, it's even beyond exponential in terms of the lack of our brain's ability to even, what's a hypersphere? What's a hypercube? I mean, you can represent it with a stick and line drawing, but movies like Interstellar try to popularize this stuff and kind of add smartness to where everyone's seen that analogy where you take a flat piece of paper and you say, if you're trying to get from here to here, if you bend the space-time itself and then you take the pen and you poke it through, right? And so Kyle Hill, I think, science YouTuber, was doing a competition to see what the best representation of that would be if you took it up 1 notch. So instead of a hole through a 2-dimensional surface that's been folded, what would a 3-dimensional space that's been folded and there's a hole in it look like? And it's kind of like a black hole, but there's some gap that I'm missing, but there is a way you can interpret it, that the spheres we see as planets are actually holes in they're 4-dimensional holes in the 3-dimensional space. And so we perceive them. It's like you move around it, and no matter where you move around this object, or that seems to be physically in front, is actually just like a portal that you're viewing light being emanated from this 4-dimensional hole, or no, is it a 2-dimensional hole and a 3-dimensional? Anyways, yeah.
Well,
Right.
that's why he knows what a black hole is, because they never can see the other side.
If it's not a sphere, what is it? But
Sorry, what do you want me to grab?
It's a tool. Hey, go to YouTube and look up this boy explains fourth dimension. It's a classic video. I don't
yeah, like a 12-year-old kid.
He was only like 11 years old when he made that video.
How do you think it feels to be that old and to know that you're just smarter than most people?
Yeah, but if you guys, this video is about like 10 minutes long, but you just watch it. He explains it so easily. It's so crazy that the schoolboy, elementary schoolboy, can explain in such plain language, layman's term.
Better than a string theorist can explain string theory. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but he just basically just explained everything. Like he one thing that he said that totally just blew my mind was how ants are on the floor. They don't see anything above them, so they're two-dimensional on the floor, minding their own business, hauling the foods, but they don't see what's above them, who's observing from above. So he just kind of stack it up from one thing to another, and then gets to the fourth dimension. But watch that video. It's the best.
That may mean that ants are actually a predatory species, or evolved from one, because usually a prey species has senses that allow them to detect when evasive measures are needed.
Dude, giant ants. I mean, an ant the size of a golf ball, terrifying. I mean, a baseball-sized ant could carry you away. I don't like it.
Yeah, I feel like some of those gigantic ants would probably, it wouldn't work for that analogy. I think what they're trying to get at is scale. Like, that they're not.
I bet it would be delicious, though. It's like a soft-shell crab, right?
Immovable objects to them.
I think it's a matter of vantage point, right? It's where you're looking from. So, that's all the matter. Dimensionally speaking, you can't. It's like from a place of simplicity, you can look upon complexity, but from a place of complexity, it's hard to look upon simplicity. You know what I mean? It's
right.
Works one way, but not the other, kind of.
We're inside of that. You know what I mean? That's
usually how psychedelic trips go. They take you to the most complicated aspects of your mind, only to come back around to find out how simple it all was.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, I mean,
I like taking something in your dumbing it down to the idea of Descartes. There's a couple holographic interpretations here. So the first computers ran on card decks. They had punch cards. When my dad worked in the library in college, he had the ability to look at the 9-digit code, and without looking back on it, he could just kind of punch in with literally punching the holes in with the keyboard and creating the library card. And he recalls never making a mistake the whole time he was there. That might have been being evaluated for something, but
IBM for that.
So the first computer would run on carts, like you would wheel in a cart of cards and feed them in sequence, and it would perform a series of operations, correct? And what did it say? What did Descartes? It said, I think, therefore I am. And so if you're fancy computer chips, you're going to claim that one day they're going to be conscious or already, then who's to say that rack of punch cards isn't also conscious, correct? Or it embodies the architecture necessary to manifest a conscious entity, a decision-making, reason-having entity. And then also, if you look at America, it's middle America, and just keep zooming in and out, there's a giant grid system. And it's something that, depending on the resolution you're at or the height, it's just disconcerting. It's one of these things that, I think it was Idiocracy, where they do this rapid powers of 10 thing where they zoom up above the city and it's showing you how messed up shit has gotten. But in this case, it's order that's being shown as you go up and down, and you're going, oh wait, see, I see the big squares, and then you keep zooming in and they're smaller. So if this whole continent was occupied by Romans or Germans, otherwise, who put all those straight lines all the way? By the time you get to the East Coast, it's like cow paths and crisscross lines, but 2/3 of America, which is a pretty big, and up into Canada, it's just gridded. It's like an alien had a laser and just flew it in a pattern and just scorched these patterns into the earth.
Yeah,
look at that. Eventually, this grid emerges, and no matter where you zoom in,
fly over it.
Emerges,
it's nuts.
What really freaked me out was when I saw South America, because they always talk about burning down the rainforest. Get down there for a bit. But you look at some of these places, boom, you just see it here. It looks like army camo, because they've cut out square miles or 50 square miles chunks of places like this, And the worst, let me go to Paraguay because it's
Yeah.
like there's no one living there, so it's even more.
Was it
impressive.
Paraguay you said was run by the Yakuza?
It's accelerated
Peru.
because now they have a
Peru.
freeway going straight through the forest now.
Look at this, man. This is just crazy. It's just straight up grids, and there's nobody living in a lot of these
But
places.
you said it in a positive light. You said that it was the most corrupt country in that it was the safest.
I think
the person trying to tell you the South was corrupt in a bad way. You re-explained it.
Paraguay is more corrupt than Peru and more safe than Peru. But Peru is run by the Yakuza.
You know what? You know George Bush. He bought a huge swath of land down there in Paraguay,
right?
Because
he bought
it's
land.
one of the world's largest aquifer.
He bought land, right?
There's a place in New York called Fuera Bush, Fuera Bush. So like, there's a giant pit mine right near there.
Down there.
And it, I was showing someone, and they said, "Oh, you found Fuera Bush, the Fuera Bush. Oh, you found him on the map. Good."
If you go Philadelphia, Paraguay, you'll get to this
New
little
New Germania.
Yeah, New Germania, but they also have. Let me see if I can find Hindenburg Avenue. Is that right? It's right here, Hindenburg Avenue, in the middle of this gridded area.
This video I want to find so bad. It was actually Johnny Knoxville. Johnny Knoxville, I think it was part of Jackass, but they did a video on the Twin Town. What's that? Not the death doctor from the Nazi death doctor who did a twin experiment. What's his name?
Mengele?
Mengele, yeah. But that document
was that guy. God, that's funny.
But it
I like again as far as history rhyming. Alex Jones has like two doctors on who both, if you mutter their name too quickly, it sounds like you're saying.
Ian knows a guy who's the great grandson or the grandson of Mengele from Brazil, and it's an interesting guy who has his own YouTube. I don't know if he still does YouTube videos, but he did.
Does everybody know what a merkin is? Like what an American? Like, but in the colonial days, when they had thin cotton pants, a merkin was a doily that a man would wear over his schlong piece so that it wasn't so, in everyone's face. So
like a cod piece, but it was...
well, it was instead of exterior, though. But as like a practical joke on it. You guys are calling yourself what? You're Americans? Okay. It's like they've never heard of a merkin before, but... It's
also a dried spice from Chile. Fun fact.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about the German pharmaceutical Merck. Merkin, I don't know.
And a mercenary. America was known like you could go and recruit a bunch of endlessly lethal people, and that's what one of our main exports for a long time. And what was Blackwater or other? May still be.
Yeah, still is kind of. So okay, Merca. I think we hit most of the topics. Is there anything you guys wanted to cover that you didn't get to cover? You were worried about missing that people need to think about.
I want to talk about Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, you know what? It's worth it. Let's do it. So I've been wanting to do that, and everyone's like,
Don't Look Up.
Everyone's like, this is the least important thing. Yes, Leonardo da Vinci. Even DuckDuckGo wants me to change.
You didn't mean DiCaprio.
No, I did.
DiCaprio.
Yeah, no, this is.
Do we all agree that he played Alex Jones?
People think it's lame that we're talking about celebrity, issues and whatever, but I think it's deeper because we're talking about mind control. But go ahead.
I think something is really horribly wrong with him. What is it? The number 25 is causing so much trauma.
Right. Ironically, most women start to know what they're thinking and want around 25. I think that might be part of the deal. It's like once you kind of become an adult.
A man boy. We're talking about a man boy.
Well, 20 years ago, the rumor circulated that he had a Viagra prescription, and some women are, when I heard that, it was like a knock on him. But to some people or to some women, when they hear that, it's like, oh, we're racing, and you have NOS in the trunk just in case. Good. Like,
I hear it as like it sounds like a dangerous thing. He's trying to, become a sexual
predator.
Fair
warning. One of my ex-girlfriend's father stroked out because it was right when it was invented and released, maybe. And if you drink at the same time as you're on any amount of a blood thinner or a vasodilator like that, you are much more likely to have an aneurysm and a stroke. So it might feel like a good idea to go out on the town, and if you think you're going to have some whiskey dick, to pop what they claim is a full dose, which you probably need like 1/20th of whatever that is to, unless you're having real circulation issues, in which case that's not your biggest issue is getting your
We're
dick
not
hard.
saying Leonardo DiCaprio did this. All I'm saying is I hope he endorses some sort of a PSA. It'd be really cool if he was talking about this.
And
Well,
Tosh.0
okay,
proved
well,
he and 4 of his boys
I'm gonna try to
took
make
it and didn't get a hard on.
I'm gonna
So,
try to
man.
make a full report because I do think something's going on with his dad. You know, George DiCaprio. Who works
Okay,
for
yeah, this is
CIA.
important. Nobody
So-
seems to think about George DiCaprio. Is he a
And
normal looking
Timothy
guy?
Leary,
Is
they
he
all
a
work
normal
together.
looking guy? This is his dad, by the way. This is Leonardo
These
DiCaprio's
guys
dad.
are all CIA operatives. Nobody knows anything about this guy. I mean,
Pop
he
quiz.
did the New York comics, right?
What was,
You know,
oh, I'm sorry.
Go for it. I'll answer.
What was Leonardo DiCaprio's first film?
Oh,
Critters.
Critters.
No.
Oh, it
Like
was.
Critters 3 with
Yeah.
it's a towering inferno one. It's the big building. I believe that's his first movie.
Dude, that's hilarious.
In a room full of 5 people, we would naturally break off into sub conversations every now and then. Like if one person said something and was interesting, and there would be this overlap. And I think we're doing a pretty good job maintaining the integrity, though, of the.
Okay.
I think it's good though. It's synchronicity. That's what we're all about. We're all about.
Well, yeah,
syncs.
no. So this corresponds to Night Skies, the original script from which Poltergeist and ET ultimately came from, which is also relatable to Gremlins. But and they speak that the extraterrestrials came from the star Sirius, blah blah. But I'm sorry, Eddie, you were on one.
Okay. Well, it'll come together. It'll come together.
Yeah, I feel like
it's a good
Sirius,
sign
the
of a group
dog
dynamic
star,
when
and
we
the
talk over each
father.
other.
There's a connection there to his dad. George DiCaprio also did comic books and was a collaborator with Timothy Leary and Laurie Anderson.
Timothy Leary lived in Newton, my hometown.
Yeah, so he was a Leary guy. Oh yeah, really interesting.
There's a
Well, that
house
makes sense,
that we
of course.
drive by, and ever since I was young, it was explained to me that Timothy Leary used to live there. And who's Timothy Leary? And so I knew what acid was, apparently, because of the architectural landscape.
George is known for Greaser Comics, Forbidden Knowledge, Cocaine Comics, and collaborating with artists such as Laurie Henderson, Pete Von Shawley, Rich Chidlaw. His own self-publishing imprint was known as Half-Ass Press. He did a lot of pretty interesting stuff. I think he even did some stuff for Hustler. Don't quote me. But
Hold on, what did it say about Licorice Pizza down there? Let me see really quick. Hold on. In 2021, he gave his screen debut as Mr. Jack in Paul Thomas Anderson's film Licorice Pizza. Fascinating.
I like the cover. It's very.
Oh, you not seen Licorice Pizza? This is like one of Paul Thomas Anderson's best movies. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right, we'll give it a go.
Yeah,
So George DiCaprio in that movie, and he's a creepy looking guy, I guess. I mean, maybe.
But this relates to the subject too, because it's an older woman with a young. It has that whole age thing as the premise of like.
Okay, and anytime you see a dude with a Sikh like handler with him, it's always a sign. I mean, that's it's a thing. I've noticed it a lot.
It's
in my
high
life.
level shit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Seek and you shall find.
You're on the up and up, right? If you've got someone to keep your energy pure around you at all.
Nobody parties like Sikhs, man. It's the best party I've ever been to in my life. Was Sikhs in India, the tabla and the whole dancing and all of that.
I want to go to the tabla party in Vancouver.
Well, they let
I
the
heard
hair
they have
down. It's wild.
Great Canadian Sikh event going on. But okay, so we got George DiCaprio. Scary. Keep going. What were you gonna say?
Well, it kind of runs into a dead end here, but I'm just trying to figure this guy out, because I know somehow, everything about his career path, just the whole. If you ever watch those old Silver Spoon episodes, no, not Silver Spoon. No, sorry, the Growing Pain. Oh my god. There's some serious neuro-linguistic programming in some of the when he showed up, when he was an addition to the show, there were a lot of I can't just come up I can't remember the lines, but there's a lot of very suggestive sexual innuendos when this kid he was only 14 or 13 when he joined the show. So,
right, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting. He owns that island, Leonardo DiCaprio's island. Leonardo DiCaprio Island is like he's got a.
Are we supposed to feel bad for him if he was sleeping with models that were 25 when he was 13 as well, and that was kind of how he was shown the ropes? And
I feel
Joe Rogan probably had to, or he made the joke about like even if it's Rosie O'Donnell or if that's the pussy you have to eat to climb the ladder, then I mean
he won his first
Oscar
Roseanne after he got pretty much like
mauled by a bear.
Yeah. I don't know if it's mauled or actually something else.
That was pretty bad, man.
I'm talking about.
Oh, interesting point. Yeah.
He was a good choice to play Howard Hughes. Isn't it
Right.
weird that Leonardo DiCaprio is in a movie about the guy who flew the biggest plane of his time with the Spruce Goose, and is also in a movie about the world's biggest boat that sank? Just saying.
Well, more tortured
Think about
soul, DiCaprio or Carey? I feel like DiCaprio, by doing Shutter Island, he's leaned into expanding the depth of his the
More
Carey's
tortured,
net-
more
it's-
tortured souls,
yeah.
probably DiCaprio. Carey tortures more souls. You've heard the whole thing. With
No,
his,
he makes dance flicks. Did you see the dance sequence in the
Talking about
new
Jim Carrey?
Sonic the Hedgehog movie?
Yeah, that's okay. That's all awesome. But what about his
that in
girlfriend?
with Cameron Diaz in The Mask? Jim Carrey is an underappreciated dance choreographer.
Yeah,
I'm just going to put that out there.
He's also
No one will ever again acknowledge his prowess.
Jim Carrey is
in this realm,
deeply
but
saddened
it is
by the
undeniable.
apparent suicide of girlfriend Cathriona White and kind and
Okay,
elegant Irish power.
dude. I gotta
No?
go. Can you give me like 1 minute on this? To, like,
Go far,
so
go
basically,
hard.
so when this happened, I remember articles that were describing her death, and it wasn't calling it a suicide. It was saying that she was doing a Scientology exercise that involved fasting and like intense sauna sessions, and that basically they wouldn't move her through the rank. Like she had to keep repeating it, and so they basically put her through this whole physical ordeal that she just died while doing it. And so initially, when the story first broke, I remember you could find articles on that.
They usually only do that to women when they're being parturated. Is just wait for them to bleed out and die. You're saying they did this to
the last time I tried to look that up,
non-pregnant women?
I couldn't find it, but there was more than a few articles speaking to her death as basically blaming Scientology for pushing her too far. And then it seems like over time, like that's just like scrubbed from the internet. Apparently, maybe there's something out there, but
I've heard mostly the version that he got her pills. Yeah, STD. Exactly. Eddie, go ahead.
That's what I heard. I don't know anything else, but
that was a story. That maybe Jim Carrey allegedly gave her STDs.
There was a text exchange where she said that you gave me this, and he was like, whatever, and that was the most we have on that, I guess.
I could see how someone would construe giving pills to a woman in pain if she happened to be also in childbirth be perceived as attempted murder on the child.
I think it's very possible that the whole thing is a fucking cover up for what was going on with what Scientology did to her. But I don't know that. I'm not going to claim that authoritatively. But that was what I remember being my takeaway. It was like, I
went to the Church of Scientology here in Boston, and they've got some weird 1930s era World's Fair. There's a small spherical room that has the world's map projected in its backlit panels, and there's just some voice that comes on. There's a small glass bridge through this thing. In the pictures, it looks like this grand exhibit, but 20 people at a time. There's some aged gentleman who leads people in and out and just hits play on this thing.
And you hear this a lot, though. Mark Hamill, he was all called under fire because he was calling Trump despicable after he pressured his son's girlfriend into abortion, saying that it would be crazy to telling her it would be crazy to bring a child into the world that nobody wanted. Right.
So
I mean, there's a lot of
how many people share this article to him on his Twitter. It's so frequent. Like, oh, there it is again, man. He's that.
Well, if you're bringing a child into this world, was it out of this world at one point?
Thoughts to ponder. Well, guys, I think we hit a lot of topics. I think we should jump into telling you guys where to find their content. Let me pull up first Andy on the Deep Share podcast. I know you have a couple new episodes. I think everyone should jump in. I mean, the last week you put out what the heck, friggin' 5 episodes.
Yeah, I've been too sparse, so I'm just throwing everything
awesome
at everybody. And tomorrow I got another episode coming out with Robert Bosnack, all about alchemy and embodying imagination. It's pretty cool.
That's going to be legit. And then David on the Sync Book, you can go to thesyncbook.com, come down the page till you see that cute girl on Syncflix. Click on Syncflix, and there is now Billy Idol Rebel Yell with star 80 at the top.
Yep, the only album released the same day and year as Bob Fosse's Star 80 was Billy Idol's Rebel Yell, and they do something pretty crazy together. But and then there's maybe 200 plus sync films for streaming and download that I've managed to upload over the years.
Right. One of the ones we brought up today was the Crystal Cactus one.
It's probably a mile down here, but yeah.
Yeah, but that one's a good one too. I recommend checking that out. And then also, hey, Holywood Mountain. If you just pass that by, Holywood Mountain is a really good one. It's got Holy Mountain and Marilyn Manson's Hollywood together.
Yeah,
Andreas.
Alejandro Jodorowsky officiated Marilyn Manson's wedding and referred to this album as Manson's magnum opus. So they're good friends. So yeah, it's a great thing.
Andrea, just one last thing, because in Synchronous you mentioned the tattoo of the Soviet coagula on what's her name, the Harry Potter author.
Oh yeah,
JK.
J.K. Rowling, right? Yeah.
J.K. Rowling, yeah. So that was a shocker when you posted that. So
Where's
of course,
I'm just gonna find that if I search Andreas, will it pop
Of course,
up?
I have to mention that syncing with Marilyn Manson, who also has on his wrist and
Right. Well, so solve coagula is actually a pretty interesting thing, because it's not just Baphomet that has solve coagula. It's an alchemist saying that goes back. So it is
separate, coagulate, reunite. Is that what we're?
Yeah, you gotta separate and coagulate. You know, I think
we're
that's
talking about a natural process once again, demonized, of course.
Sure.
Yeah, but you know, it doesn't help with Marilyn Manson, Lana Del Rey, and J.K.
just
Rowling.
filtered through something that makes you think it's white when it's actually gray or not.
So guys, don't attack your friends just because they have interesting tattoos. But
yes,
like
in Latin, the Popol Vuh means the voice of the Pope, whereas the Popol Vuh is the long lost Bible. This is like the Holy Pibby of the Americas, right? Or a little bit more.
So yeah,
that's interesting.
But yeah, so you guys can get to Synchronous and join the Synchronous group, because there's always some interesting synchronicities there. And then
come join the post. You know, we'll welcome more contributors. We need more contributions.
Can I just say that it was Tracy Twyman was like the main person doing. If you go to Wikipedia and you look at Baphomet, almost everything there is from Tracy Twyman, who wrote like a very empirical, probably the most authoritative book on Baphomet that's out there. Rest in peace.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about Tracy.
Wisdom,
and again, when you're studying goats like that, the idea of a Freemartin and a Freemason, you look up what a Freemartin is, educate yourself, learn about diapause and mammalian species, and then question everything you know. The most credible research on diapause I saw published said that if this is in any way as true in humans as it has shown to be in the limited evidence we have, and we see in other mammal species, we have to entirely reevaluate our approach from the ground up to obstetrics, essentially. And
eventually we'll bring it up. Maybe next week we can talk about it, because William Ramsey Investigates will be here. We can talk about white Baphomet, which is apparently an ancient concept that predated the dark Baphomet. And so there's something I was learning about that's interesting there. But yes, please go to tartarynova.com or andreas.me. You can link to the Discord, to the Matrix server, to the Odyssey videos, to the YouTube videos. And you can even donate, which would be so good. I appreciate it when you keep us making videos. I appreciate it.
And I drop bits. I have a bunch of kind of pictures of artifacts to juxtapose to kind of definitively prove that there was a crossing of the Pacific Ocean from India and China and those cultures thousands of years ago. And the idea that we populated North America from north to south by migrating and following land packs of animals is laughable in the face of the new evidence. And so I need to drip this information out, and I'm happy the way Andreas will go on everyone's podcast and give the same old explanation about.
We're gonna try to do a thing Sunday though with Stefan too. And Stefan, if you've got a thing you want to lead people to,
I'll drop it here first, and then other people may want to have me elaborate or ask other questions or.
Legit. And
guys, show me what they found that backs up even further and expands upon the new body of knowledge that we're building here. That's going to replace Project 1619.
You can send fan mail. So if you haven't thought to do it yet, send a message, a postcard, or a little doll to Andreas Xirtus, P.O. Box 131, Cambridge, Minnesota, United States of America 55008. And yeah,
Theo Vaughn refers to his mail opening challenge as the Anthrax challenge when he opens all his mail. They're a brave man. They're a brave man, Andreas.
Guys, I love you very much. I will wear gloves when I get my mail. Take care. See you next time. Peace.